Chapter 730. All of a sudden, two vines made of earth flew out from under his feet. This was the mystical skill that Jiyu had created. The sand Xian energy and the wood Xian skill gathered together and quickly gathered together, entangling his feet. At this moment, the sand on the ground seemed to soften. At this moment, the rogue cultivator sank deep into the ground. The rogue cultivator was halfway down. He laughed out loud and said, "You want to escape from my mystical skill?" After he finished saying those words, the profound energy in his body gathered together and soared into the sky. At this moment, the palm energy danced in the air as it rushed forward. A huge palm made of mystic chi appeared in the void. It rushed forward and exploded on the ground. With a loud boom, the surrounding things fell down. The palm was waving in front of Jiyu in an instant. Jiyu swung her sword heavily. The long sword fell on the palm, and a loud boom was heard. The clouds in the palm were dispersing. At this moment, the rogue cultivator fixed his eyes on Jiyu. He raised the precious weapon in his hand and attacked Jiyu. Jiyu picked up the precious weapon. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared on the spot. She waved the precious weapon and stabbed the rogue cultivator. The precious weapon penetrated his body. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground at the next moment. The remaining rogue cultivators were delighted when they saw that the expert at the peak of LV8 human profound realm killed the rogue cultivator with one strike. They took a step forward and said with trembling bodies, wait, we're willing to buy it with dark stones." Only then did Jiyu retract his hand. The fatty shouted and waved the horsewhip. In the next moment, the carriage stopped. At this moment, he walked down from the carriage. They opened the door of the carriage. The manservant of the Liu family saw this scene. He exchanged a look and walked out from the other side. He said indifferently, "Your Honor, the elixirs in their carriage are indeed 8th-grade elixirs." Liu Zhang swept all the things on the table to the ground. He looked in the direction of Jiyu. Jiyu turned around and walked slowly in the other direction. He patted the table and said, "You go and ask our shop to lower the price of the elixirs." "But Jiyu and the others are giving out the elixirs." "Yes, it seems to be a buy one, get one free deal." After saying this, they looked at each other. At this moment, he took a step forward and sat on the chair. He slowly raised his hands, and a ball of dark chi flowed out from his hands. It was infused into the manservant's body. That manservant was lifted into the air by Xian energy. His neck seemed to be strangled by someone. Lu Chang widened his eyes and looked at that person. He said faintly, "Can't you think of a way?" "Young master, in this situation, we can only rely on force." After saying those words, he raised his hands. At this moment, he landed on the ground. He opened his eyes wide. A row of experts of the 8th level of the human profound realm walked out of the room. They looked at each other and ran in the other direction. They looked at each other and then stood up. The rest of the people gathered. At this moment, they rushed toward Jiyu and the fatty's shop. They rushed into the shop and waved the weapons in their hands when they saw people. They let out miserable cries. At this moment, Jiyu slowly walked forward. She raised the weapons in her hands and looked at each other. She said indifferently, "Liu Zhang, I let you escape from the evolving temple 2 days ago. What do you want to do today?" After saying this, the two of them looked at each other. In an instant, they flew up and landed in front of Jiyu. "You're not going to be so lucky today." The rest of the people raised the weapons in their hands and rushed toward Jiyu. Liu Zhang was very confident in his hired thugs. They were people who could set off a bloody storm in the central region. However, Jiyu suddenly turned around and waved her weapon at one of the thugs. His eyes blinked rapidly. That precious weapon was right in front of him, and a sword was about to pierce him. That sword was about to cut him down. A trace of blood flowed out of the thug's body. The rest of the people rushed forward. A trace of dark force appeared in Jiyu's hands. At this moment, 3 or 4 water dragons gushed out from several pillars from the ground. At this moment, the pillar gathered together, and so did the mystical dragons. They flew forward at the same time and grabbed the water dragon in front of them with both hands. At this moment, his legs slid down and slid backwards. They widened their eyes. At this moment, they slowly glanced forward. Ji raised the weapon in her hand and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The next moment, she waved her sword and the weapon fell heavily. The water dragons flew forward at this moment. The explosion hit everyone, and they were all sent flying out of the shop. They raised their heads and looked in Jiyu's direction. After yelling kill, they flew up and landed in front of Jiyu in a few leaps. Liu Zhang was not strong. When he saw that all his thugs were sent flying by Jiyu, he was terrified. His eyes were like a frightened cockroach as he ran out of the door. At this moment, he kept shouting, "Help! Help!" Jiyu's body did not move. In an instant, he disappeared from where he was. A kick landed on his back, and he fell to the ground at that moment. He spat out a mouthful of blood. He raised the precious weapon in his hand and stabbed down with a heavy sword. The rest of the thugs spat out mouthfuls of blood. At this moment, Jiyu slowly took a step forward. Just as she was about to attack, they raised their heads. The rest of the thugs landed on the ground. Wait! At this moment, the sound of thunder rang in the air. They descended from the sky and looked in Jiyu's direction. Elder Liu Zhang. Young Master Jiyu, can you let my son go? They looked at each other. He said slowly, your son needs to be taught. After he finished speaking, he lifted the treasured weapon beside him and threw it up. The treasured weapon pierced through his body, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. Jiyu took 2 steps forward and helped him up. He said calmly, I'm just taking back our bet. He chopped off Liu Zhang's shoulder. They looked at each other and said calmly, good boy, I'll leave old Luo to you. You're just a human profound realm brat, but you have the guts. Good, I'll let you see what it means to be in the earth profound realm. The bejeweled artifact shot forward in an instant. Jiyu raised his hand and blocked the bejeweled artifact. At this moment, he picked up the life treasure beside him and held it in his hand. Then, he clashed with the life treasure. A huge force erupted at this moment, and a huge explosion sounded in the air. Jiyu landed on the ground, his hands trembling. It had been a long time since he had such an exciting battle. He felt that his body was full of hot blood. The two of them flew forward quickly. In a short moment, they had fought hundreds of rounds in the air. There were simply too many profound skills on Jiyu's body, causing that earth profound realm expert, who was addressed as Old Luo, to feel a slight headache. Old Luo, there's no need to be lenient. I'll compensate for the sacrifice of the others. The person called Old Luo licked his lips as a smile appeared on his face. Yes, my lord. After saying this, he suddenly moved. In a flash, he appeared in front of Jiyu. He raised the weapon in his hand and stabbed it in Jiyu's direction. Jiyu flew backwards. At this moment, the weapons exploded. In the blink of an eye, thousands of weapons appeared in the air. All of a sudden, the thousands of precious weapons thrust forward. Jiyu's eyes widened. A thick wall of earth appeared and slammed into the wall, causing a loud boom to ring out. A trace of blood flowed out of his mouth. However, Luo Di Xian wasn't any better. In order to attack him, Jiyu's weapon appeared in his hand. They looked at each other. At this time, he suddenly retreated. In the blink of an eye, Jiyu burst out a powerful thunder and lightning power, which gathered in the sky and struck down from the sky. The 30 lightning bolts landed on Jiyu's body. At this moment, Jiyu disappeared from his spot. He raised his hands, and the lightning bolts gathered in his hands. Jiyu abruptly raised his hand and struck down with a heavy blow. Jiyu turned around and spread out his hands. In an instant, a boundless amount of sand and soil gathered in the air. Jiyu's eyes widened as he looked at Meng Hao. Meng Hao's eyes widened as he looked at Meng Hao. It quickly gathered. Thousands of tons of sand and soil quickly pressed down. The pressure on Luo Di Xian increased greatly in an instant. Boy, you've completely angered me. He roared, opened his hands, and a boom sounded. The thousands of tons of profound energy were all sent flying. The sand and soil exploded in an instant and scattered in all directions. Chapter 731. The Xian energy in Jiyu's hands also surged crazily at this time. Facing this pressure of 1,000 tons, the 5 types of Xian energy in his body flew out and desperately protected Ji Yu's bloodline. The pressure suddenly multiplied, and a powerful force seemed to be squeezing out the last bit of strength in Ji Yu's body. Boom! The ground caved in, and a huge crater appeared in front of everyone. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at each other. Luo Dixian never expected that a little brat at the human profound realm could actually resist 50% of his power. Boy, I didn't expect you to have inherited 5 types of profound sage inheritance. But so what? In the face of absolute strength, there is no such thing as a trump card. He snorted coldly and flew up quickly. At the Earth profound realm, one could already control the power of flight. An invisible pressure gathered around Ji Yu again. Fatty and the others from the God-evolving peak wanted to help, but they were all excluded by this invisible Xian energy. They looked at each other. Profound skill, myriad blessing, heavenly thunder. After roaring these words, countless lightning bolts directly struck down from the sky. This was different from the lightning bolts of the human profound realm that gathered the elements from the outside world. This was using one's own Xian energy to condense Xian energy that was comparable to the power of heaven and earth. This Xian energy directly hit the ground, as if it would also be penetrated. Ji Yu clenched his teeth and persevered. The Xian energy in his hands condensed to a point. He was very clear in his heart that he was not Luo Dixian's opponent. There was only one way to make him perish together with him, and that was to explode the 5 types of Xian energy in front of him. Profound skill, myriad, lightning, heavenly technique. The power of thunder and lightning fell from the sky and continuously struck the pillar of thunder and lightning in front of Ji Yu. Boom, boom, boom. 3 loud sounds of thunder and lightning were heard. Everyone in front of them sucked in a breath of cold air. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared from where they were, and a moment later, they appeared in front of each other. He raised his hands and condensed the Xian energy in his body to a point. The Xian energy in his hands suddenly soared. A loud boom was heard. A few disciples of the evolving temple attacked at the same time, using their own Xian energy to attack the invisible barrier. If he wasn't worried about the evolving temple's retaliation, Luo Dixian would have already started a massacre. He snorted coldly. "You want to break my seal with such a small trick?" Immediately after, a ball of fire was suddenly reflected from the thick barrier, sending all the people around it flying. They all slammed into the rocks and screamed in pain. Ji suddenly turned around and roared. The power of lightning on her body scattered in all directions. It gradually transformed into a sphere of light, which rapidly flew forward. A loud boom rang out, and everything around them fell down. Only then did Ji Yu feel the weight on her body lightening. In just a moment, she had disappeared from where she was standing. In the next moment, with the Kuan Peng giant sword in hand, he arrived in front of the barrier and bombarded one of the points with the dark force that he had prepared beforehand. Along with a cracking sound, the barrier suddenly shattered. Luo Dixian only felt a trace of surprise. How'd he do it? Why was he able to break through his profound energy? This was simply an inconceivable existence. He suddenly took in a breath of cold air. This was simply too miraculous, wasn't it? In the blink of an eye, Ji Yu took advantage of the time before he could react and disappeared. When she reappeared, she was already in midair. The Kuan Peng giant sword in his hand directly slashed down. That huge dark force impacted everything in front of him. He flew up and instantly arrived in front of Luo Dixian. You think you're qualified to compete with this old man's dark force? You're simply courting death. After roaring, he suddenly waved his hand. A tremendous force broke free from his hand and smashed down heavily in Ji Yu's direction. Suddenly, the corner of Ji Yu's mouth revealed a playful smile. She waved the Kuan Peng giant sword in her hand heavily. Suddenly, the Kuan Peng giant sword emitted a bird's cry. The sound of the bird's cry pierced through the sky. Luo Dixian took in a breath of cold air. What, this is actually the Kuan Peng real body. You actually have the Kuan Peng real body as the artifact spirit. He didn't dare to believe everything in front of him. Ji Yu was simply too powerful. She could actually reclaim this thing that was extinct on the mainland 1,000 years ago. This was simply a dream. Countless cultivators who didn't want such a treasure to protect their safety. Only Ji Yu could do it. However, no matter how powerful she was, with Ji Yu's strength, she probably couldn't unleash 30% of the Kuan Peng giant sword ability. Her dark force collided with the Kuan Peng real body, and the two of them looked at each other. There seemed to be a trace of blood flowing from the corner of Ji Yu's mouth. He roared, "Go to hell!" After roaring this sentence, the giant bird in the sky suddenly descended and suppressed Ji Yu. Ji Yu suddenly raised the Kuan Peng giant sword in her hand. A drop of blood fell on the Kuan Peng giant sword. As if stimulated by this drop of blood, the Kuan Peng real body let out a roar and moved the wings in its hand. With a roar, it flew up and collided head-on with Luo Dixian. No matter how strong Luo Dixian was, he was definitely not an opponent of the Kuan Peng real body. The two dark forces collided heavily, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He fell to the ground. Fortunately, Lu Zheng caught him. He said faintly, "Sorry, sect master, I was careless." "It's okay, kid. You're quite powerful. Why don't you let this old man play with you?" Ji Yu said with a smile, "No need, old man. You better find someone to play with your ass." After hearing Ji Yu's humiliating words, he clenched his fists tightly. Then he soared into the sky and punched the air. Boom! Another explosive sound rang out. The Kuan Peng real body was actually scattered by him. Yi Chumei's voice slowly came. "Sect Master Lu, do you really think that there's no one in the Divine Array Peak? How dare you hurt my disciple on this street? I was wondering who it was." "So it's the first disciple of the Divine Array Peak's Taoist Qing Feng. But if your master was here, I would be somewhat afraid of him. You're just a girl. You'd better go back and refine your array. You're courting death." Accompanying this cold voice, a fairy-like girl flew down. Who else could it be but Yi Chumei? But at this moment, Yi Chumei was too beautiful. Everyone's eyes were instantly attracted to her. Lu Zheng sneered. "You overestimate yourself." Then he combined two steps into one. Mystic skill, Mad Master's fist aura. The aura around his body suddenly turned into a fierce master. He suddenly ran in Yi Chumei's direction. Ji Yu shouted, "Master, be careful." It should be known that Yi Chumei's mystic energy had been greatly damaged. It was already very difficult for her to barely be able to fight. Even though Ji Yu was an outsider, he could feel the power of this mystic skill. He anxiously flew forward and stomped on the ground. Instantly, a five-pointed star appeared on the ground. The five-pointed star quickly condensed into Ji Yu's precious weapon. Ji Yu's blood dripped onto the precious weapon. Then, he slashed at the precious weapon. Blood instantly filled the entire precious weapon, and he swung it forward. This attack directly blocked the mystic energy. However, it did not last long before shattering. Yi Chumei unhurriedly took a step forward. The precious weapon in her hand slashed down leisurely. In an instant, the mystic energy was directly cut in half by her sword aura. To be able to directly split the attack of a bejeweled artifact into two, this was something that could only be done by someone who had a great understanding of the Tao of bejeweled artifacts. The two forces collided with the tree behind them. In an instant, the tree collapsed. Yi Chumei walked forward step by step. "It seems that our evolving temple has been bitterly chasing after the Queen's footsteps all these years. Many people have forgotten about our existence. The three empires did not listen to orders to suppress each other. Even a mere alchemy sect dares to act recklessly in our territory. What do you think the evolving temple is? You deserve to die." With each of these three sentences, Lu Zheng only felt his heart tremble. His entire body trembled. Then, a long sword suddenly pierced towards his throat. After piercing through his throat, blood continuously flowed out from his mouth. He clutched his throat. Even when a profound Earth Realm expert's physical body was injured, a strand of his soul could still maintain consciousness. He pointed at Yi Chumei in front of him. He never expected Yi Chumei to be so strong. Even Ji felt that Yi Chumei's strength was somewhat beyond his imagination. Yi Chumei frowned and said to Ji, "Why aren't you packing up?" After speaking, she walked out of the deep forest. Ji suddenly turned around and knocked on the fatty's body. "I'll leave the rest to you." Luo Dixian did not dare to move at all. When Yi Chumei had the intention to leave, he immediately tapped on Lu Zhang's acupoint. With one hand holding him, the other holding Lu Zhang, he directly fled. Ji followed, only to see that Yi Chumei was already gone. Helpless, he could only return to this small, deep forest and stroll around. Suddenly, he heard a melodious voice. This voice seemed a little familiar, so he followed the direction of the voice and walked over. Chapter 732. Ji and the others flew under the 3,000 clouds movement and quickly arrived on top of a huge tree. The surroundings were dotted with stars, and there was a huge lake in the center. There seemed to be a trace of steam rising from it. It seemed to be the source of a hot spring. Just as he landed on the tree, a lovely person suddenly emerged from the water. Her beautiful hair made Ji swallow a mouthful of saliva. This scene was too beautiful. It was so beautiful that it was unbelievable. Only then did that beautiful figure turn around and suddenly let out a shriek of "Aya!" Ji hurriedly blocked in front of her. He only saw that the beautiful figure was actually his master, Yi Chumei. "Master, I didn't do it on purpose. I originally wanted to find you." "Then why did you look?" Although Yi Chumei had cultivated for many years, she had always respected strength. When had she ever let others see her pure body? Naturally, this was no exception. She bashfully slapped the surface of the water, and a huge curtain of water soared into the sky. It directly blocked Ji eyes. He didn't know when she had already come ashore and changed her clothes. Ji cupped his hands. "Please forgive me, master. I'll let it go this time. Don't do it again." Suddenly, the Ishin Peak's bell rang. Yi Chumei frowned and said, "Could it be that there's a problem with the barrier again?" After a period of time in the evolving temple, Ji had some understanding of barriers. Although Jiang Chuyue had sacrificed herself in exchange for the safety of the people in this province, how could there be a barrier that could last for eternity? The barrier would be destroyed every year. The result of all this was that the demon beasts in the 100 Beast Mountain range would riot every time, just like last time. In order to protect everyone, the evolving temple had no choice but to choose another strategy, which was to retreat and then continuously strengthen the barrier. This was why the 5 major domains were safe. Otherwise, with the 5 major domains killing each other, they would have been swallowed by the other 11 provinces long ago. Ji took in a deep breath of cold air. If the barrier was opened, even Jiang Chua wouldn't have the ability to save everyone inside the barrier. With a thought, the Ice Queen's voice was transmitted into Ji's mind from the spirit rope. "There's nothing I can do. I'm still fusing with the 4 strands of soul power. Unless I can obtain the final strand of soul power, there's nothing I can do." He had no choice but to follow along and take a look himself. He originally wanted to help this mysterious person take back his spirit and return the world to normal. But he didn't expect that this person didn't have a good idea either. Yi Chumei said, "If we go back now, we won't make it in time. I know how to use treasures. Hold me tight." When Yi Chumei said this, she didn't feel that anything was wrong. It was only when Ji hugged her waist that she slowly blushed. It turned out that the 3 outstanding disciples of the Ishin Peak had returned today. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. As long as it wasn't about the barrier, it was fine. Since the 3 heroes have returned, why don't we bring forward the ranking ceremony? Do you want your rankings to be higher? Yes. Very good. Let's not delay. Let's begin now. The Great Elder said seriously on the stage. Suddenly, an extremely nimble brat jumped onto the stage. "I'm Aho. Greetings, everyone. I am the head disciple of the Mystic Skills Peak, ranked 4,000. Today, I want to challenge junior brother Ji and see if he lives up to the title of genius." Since Ji was Yi Chumei's disciple, he was ranked at the top 2,000. Among the 5,000 people in the evolving temple, he was considered to be one of the most outstanding. He naturally had no reason to back down. Thus, he took a step forward and cupped his fists. Greetings, senior brother. Let's begin. The two didn't exchange any pleasantries. They directly started fighting. Maho was very confident because he was the most outstanding existence in the Mystic Skills peak. If it wasn't for the fact that he didn't enter the peak earlier than his senior brothers, he would have become a special existence long ago. He cupped his fists and didn't waste any words. A wave of mystic energy appeared in his hands, and he heavily waved them forward. Suddenly, the sky changed color, and a wave of mystic energy directly pressed down. Ji suddenly turned around and used the artifact in his hand to receive it. Just as he blocked this mystic skill, Maho's mouth revealed a trace of a smile. Junior brother, you fell for it. After saying this, the ball of light in the air suddenly exploded and countless vines burst out from within. Haha, everyone says that Junior Brother G has the power of 5 elements. Today, let me see how much Junior Brother has comprehended. The elders on the stage couldn't help but stroke their beards. Looks like Gu really is a special existence. Mayor, you've accepted a good disciple. That's right, that's right. But Maho's mystic skills are ever-changing. Let's just watch the performance with all our heart. Countless vines suddenly exploded in the air, and countless vines fell from the sky, wrapping around Gu's hands and feet. Gu tried to struggle free. Unexpectedly, the power of the vines wrapped around Gu's hands and tightened. He stomped heavily on the ground. Suddenly, 2 earthen dragons emerged from the ground and roared at the sky. Then, they swooped down and entered the ground. After circling the ground for a while, Gu's eyes widened. Then, Gu's eyes widened. After circling around for a while, those earth dragons suddenly flew up and pounced towards Gu's direction. Gu frowned, and the mystic energy in his hands was released to the extreme. A terrifying mystic energy directly broke through his hands and broke the vines. Gu landed on the ground and heaved a sigh of relief. This fellow's strength was really not to be underestimated. A gust of mystic energy was contained in his hands. Gu suddenly raised his hands, and after Maho's vines were broken, countless little flower seeds fell to the ground. In an instant, it seemed to have turned into a huge tree that covered the sky, trapping Gu in it. Maho muttered some words and waved his hand. In an instant, a thundercloud appeared in the sky. Indeed, he played with mystic skills. But on the path of mystic skills, although he was able to connect them continuously, the biggest problem was that this fellow's mystic energy was still very weak. Gu held the treasure weapon, Kuin Peng Giant Sword, and a ball of fire burst out. It flew in all directions, and the flames instantly burned those trees. Before the thundercloud in the sky fell, countless water droplets suddenly appeared from the ground. Countless water droplets floated in the sky and actually caught all the lightning that was falling. The lightning bolts that were supported by water mystic energy were incomparably strong, and all of them surged towards the opponent. Maho gave a miserable cry and fell to the ground with his body charred black. This round, Gu wins. Maho stood up with difficulty and looked at his hands in disappointment. Gu threw 2 bottles of medicine to him. Actually, your strength is not bad. Just now, if I was careless, I would have fallen into your trap. But your problem is that your own cultivation has not caught up with the usage of this set of chain mystic skills. After hearing Gu's words, his heart suddenly thumped. So that was the case. No wonder he had been trapped all this while. No wonder his ranking had not been able to rise. He cupped his fist and said, "Thank you, senior brother." Currently, Gu's ranking did not change. He did not know that a single sentence from him today would result in the birth of a profound technique grandmaster. He was only pondering. Since he had entered the arena, it was impossible for him not to raise his ranking. I want to challenge the disciple who is ranked 20th. He must be crazy. Gu is only at the 5th level of the human profound realm. He actually wants to challenge the disciple who is ranked in the top 20. If this is not crazy, then what is it? Then the disciple who is ranked 20th, Xiao Feng, come out. Xiao Feng jumped onto the arena and cupped his fist, blades and swords have no eyes. Junior brother, please be careful. After speaking, he did not wait for Jiyu's reply and directly stabbed his sword. Jiyu had actually reached the level of waste ascension. It was just that during this period of time, except for the slight opportunity when facing Luo Di Xian, he still needed a big battle to get the opportunity to improve. Today was the best opportunity. He suddenly stood up, and the sand wall was already in front of him. However, this sand wall was as if it did not exist to him. The heavy force collided with the sand wall and made a loud rumbling sound. Jiyu suddenly took 2 steps back and raised the artifact in his hand. Mystic skill, Raging Inferno. Ding! The host used Raging Inferno. Obtained 1 by 999 experience points. Raging flames instantly flew out from Jiyu's prized artifact and bombarded Xiaofeng's prized artifact. The two of them took 2 steps back. Xiaofeng then said faintly, "Not bad. You are the one who can force me back." Xiaofeng's strength had also reached the 8th level of the human profound realm. Moreover, he was not like the person who was defeated by Jiyu in the Star Soul Empire. He had completely mastered the 8th level of the human profound realm. Xiaofeng's expression became incomparably serious. Mystic skill, combination of wind and fire. The artifact in his hands flew out like the wind. His entire body was like a leaf in a gale, dodging everywhere. Jiyu's 3,000 clouds movement could only barely keep up with his pace. He suddenly turned around and heavily chopped down the artifact in his hand. Jiyu suddenly turned around and blocked the giant sword of the Kuan Peng. A wave of terrifying mystic chi spread out from the two of them. All the disciples below the arena were forced to take 2 steps back by this wave of chi. Jiyu had 5 levels of mystic chi stacked together, which was why she had such terrifying strength. However, Xiaofeng did have real strength. His body suddenly turned, and like a poisonous dragon, he quickly spun on the giant sword of the Kuan Peng. Chapter 733. Xiaofeng was hit by the sword and slowly took a step back. His gaze locked onto Jiyu's body. Jiyu abruptly turned around, and the prized artifact in his hand suddenly emitted a golden light. Then a beam of light shone brightly. The 2 profound energies collided with each other, followed by a loud rumbling sound. Even though the entire arena was protected by a formation, it still trembled. The Ishian Peak's Peak Master, who was also the sect leader, looked in Jiyu's direction with a trace of admiration in his eyes. Xiaofeng fell to the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. The 2 men's eyes met. Xiaofeng said faintly, "You lost. Admit defeat." Jiyu smiled faintly. "Senior brother, although your level is higher than mine, it doesn't mean that I lost. Why bother? You'll lose face later. You're only at the human profound realm. I'm afraid you don't have any dark force now." After saying this, the 2 of them ran forward at the same time. In a flash, they disappeared. A moment later, he was floating in the night sky. The treasure in his hand directly fell in Jiyu's direction. Ji just turned around and disappeared in an instant. A moment later, she appeared in front of him. The dark force in her hand fell heavily. With a loud bang, there was the sound of an explosion around them. Xiaofeng fell to the ground, but the 4 flags beside him emitted light at the same time. A circle was connected from the ground, and a pentagonal light was emitted from it. He slowly stood up and instantly disappeared from where he stood. Jiyu said faintly, "Golden light, rise." After shouting this, the golden light on the ground suddenly lit up. The pentagonal light on the ground instantly trapped him in the center. The remaining few people landed on the ground. They looked up and said faintly, "All right, kid, you can release the formation." After saying this, Jiyu raised both hands and dispersed the pentagonal light in front of him. They looked at each other. The white-bearded elder said faintly, "This competition is over. The winner is Jiyu." Suddenly, the audience burst into thunderous applause. Jiyu slowly walked forward. "The secret realm has been opened. Everyone, please come in." After saying this, a huge light curtain appeared in the air, and the rest of the people jumped into the light curtain. Yi Chume glanced in Ji Yu's direction. Ji Yu stepped on the stairs in the air and walked behind the light screen. With a flash of divine light, he appeared in front of a huge piece of land. The remaining people slowly raised their heads at this time and looked around. They only saw a forest appear here, and the remaining people slowly walked out at this time. They took out their treasures and walked towards Ji Yu. Because they saw what happened just now with their own eyes, they felt a sense of trust towards such a powerful teammate. Ji Yu walked in the forest. The remaining people looked at each other. All of a sudden, countless heads popped out from all directions. They looked in Ji Yu's direction, and the rest of the people suddenly lit up. The rest of the people jumped to the ground and looked at each other. These are the disciples of the other sections. Although our evolving temple has the right to speak in the central region, many sects are usually hidden in the mountains and don't have any contact with the mortal world. Hearing this, Ji Yu stopped in his tracks. He said faintly, "Be careful. There's something wrong with these people. In the secret realm, we rely on our strength. As for the rest, we don't know what will happen." At this moment, a bolt of lightning suddenly sounded in the sky. A treasure has appeared. It was unknown who took the lead to shout, but the remaining people immediately followed. In the distance, many people kept jumping up and down. But no matter where they came from, they only had one goal. They only had one goal in mind, which was the mountain range not far from here. Ji Yu said faintly, "Let's go and take a look." Their pace was neither fast nor slow. Soon, they arrived at the foot of the mountain range. A feminine man stood in front of the mountain range with a group of people. He turned around and glanced at Ji Yu and the others. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. "Boys, are you also here to participate in the treasure fight?" The murderous aura on him was so strong that it made people's hearts skip a beat when they saw it. The remaining few people with the same feminine face slowly approached behind him at this moment. They raised their hands at the same time. The dark force in their hands gathered in an instant. A loud rumbling sound was heard. Suddenly, there was an explosion in the air. The remaining people quickly ran in the direction of the mountain range. At this moment, the remaining people gradually surrounded them. They looked at each other. At this moment, he said faintly, "Be careful later." Ji Yu raised his head and looked forward. At this moment, the feminine man took 2 steps forward and stomped his foot. At this moment, a wisp of green smoke slowly rose from under his feet and gradually wrapped around his feet. In an instant, he disappeared on the spot. After a while, he appeared in front of the group of people who were running up. His feet landed on the ground. At this moment, the wisp of smoke turned into several poisonous snakes. At this moment, they turned into several long dragons and roared at the sky. Those poisonous snakes flew up in an instant. At this moment, his eyes suddenly widened. He raised his hands, and 2 balls of dark force gathered in his hands. At this moment, the 2 poisonous snakes flew out and hit the few disciples who were running up. Those people roared, and their bodies collapsed behind them. They looked at each other and got up. The treasures in their hands were gathered in his hands. At this moment, he slowly walked forward. He picked up the treasure tool in front of him and instantly charged at the person who had released the poison dragon. The feminine aura on that person's face made him smile even more happily. Suddenly, a wisp of green gas appeared on their bodies and wrapped around his body. He spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed in a pool of blood. The remaining few people ran towards Ji Yu at this moment. "I beg you, please save us." Ji Yu took out a pill bottle and threw it at the few people in front of her. They caught the bottle and held it in their hands with excitement on their faces. "This is great! This is great!" They quickly swallowed the pill. Immediately, it was as if an endless amount of energy appeared in their bodies. They stretched their legs and said indifferently, "Thank you, Brother Xian." Ji Yu took the bottle alone and said, "What do you think we should do now?" After hearing this, the remaining few people gradually surrounded Ji Yu. The feminine man said, "Who are you?" "I'm Ji Yu from the Evolving Temple's God Array Peak." "So it's the Evolving Temple. But so what? In this secret realm, it's hard to say who can escape." "That's right, huh?" The rest of the people laughed out loud. The rest of the people gradually came forward and waved their precious weapons. In an instant, they danced in the air and attacked in Ji-Yu's direction. Ji-Yu picked up the treasures beside her, turned around, and waved her sword heavily. The treasures collided with one of the treasures. The two treasures collided. The blood in Ji-Yu's hand dripped onto the ground and instantly floated in the air. Soon, a corrosive power devoured the drop of blood. They looked at each other, and Ji-Yu said indifferently, "With just a few of you?" After hearing Ji-Yu's words, the corners of their mouths curled into a smile. "Kill!" After shouting this, the remaining people flew forward. After a few leaps, they landed in Ji-Yu's direction. They did not understand why the poison on their treasures had no effect on Ji-Yu. All darkness will be hidden in the flames. After taking a step forward, a thick layer of flames covered Ji-Yu's entire body. She jumped up, as if a pair of wings had appeared on her back. Those wings flapped. It was as if countless flames were flying forward at this moment. At that moment, those flames landed on the ground. The remaining few people looked at each other at this moment. The remaining few people slowly walked forward and gathered powerful dark force in their hands. They slapped the dark force heavily on the ground. Suddenly, a few pillars of fire emerged from the ground and approached Ji-Yu. The corners of their mouths were extremely proud, as if they were saying, "Come on, let's see whose flames are more powerful." However, the flames on Ji-Yu's body were formed by a phoenix, but now the phoenix had merged with the Kuan Peng. The Kuan Peng roared, and Ji-Yu's treasures trembled. The remaining flames seemed to be sucked in. At this moment, those flames quickly gathered and were sucked into the treasures. Ji-Yu said indifferently, "Your flames are gone." Chapter 734. Ji-Yu looked at the people in front of her. All of a sudden, their bodies began to tremble. The feminine-looking man gritted his teeth and said, "Brother, hurry up and run. Leave the rest to me." After saying this, the rest of them exchanged glances with each other. The feminine-looking man said faintly, "Brother, you must stop him. Wait until I get the treasure. I will definitely come help you." After saying this, the feminine-looking man disappeared in an instant. The remaining feminine-looking man came forward. He's only at the 4th level of the human profound realm. Brothers, don't be afraid. Go. After roaring out these words, the rest of the people quickly surrounded them at this moment. They took out their treasured weapons and gradually surrounded Ji-Yu. The people from the Divine Evolving Palace this time were all experts among the disciples. The disciples of the Divine Profound Peak were the first to make a move. They stomped their feet on the ground and made countless hand seals with their hands. Countless fireballs fell from the sky. Boom, boom, boom. 3 loud sounds resounded throughout the entire world. Those fireballs crashed into the ground, creating huge craters. They raised their hands abruptly and looked ahead. In an instant, they disappeared from where they were. A moment later, they slowly walked forward. After a few ups and downs, they appeared in front of Ji-Yu. At this moment, countless fireballs crashed toward Ji-Yu. The feminine-looking men avoided the pursuit of the disciples of the Divine Profound Peak, intending to kill Ji-Yu directly. But Ji-Yu's speed was also surprisingly fast. He suddenly turned around, raised the treasured weapon in his hand, and waved it heavily. At this moment, the power of the treasured weapon hit the thick wall. After a few explosions, the remaining people raised their heads and said faintly, "Kill." After roaring these words, the remaining people looked at each other. At this moment, the remaining people stood up and waved their treasured weapons. Like a flash of lightning, they disappeared from the spot in an instant. Not long after they ran out, the remaining few people landed on the ground and took the pills in their hands. In an instant, the muscles on their bodies became thick and solid. Their fists collided heavily with the forest, and in an instant, the forest collapsed one after another. The remaining few people looked towards Ji-Yu's direction and gradually approached her. Ji-Yu abruptly turned around, and the prized artifact in her hand dropped down in an instant. But this time, he didn't release any profound skill. The array on the ground instantly appeared, outlining several golden lights, which directly shot out. Boom, boom, boom. 3 loud sounds rang out, and the remaining people quickly closed in on Jiyu. Jiyu suddenly turned around and stabbed one of them with her sword. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. After everyone was taken care of, Jiyu said slowly, "Let's go up the mountain." The disciples of the evolving divine palace gathered together and walked up the mountain. They entered the place and looked around. The effeminate man's corpse was actually lying on the ground. It wasn't easy to defeat a 6th-layer human profound realm expert who used poison. Ji took a few steps forward, and the remaining few people looked at each other. They took 2 steps forward and said faintly, "Xiaofeng, it seems that we have to be careful." When they were outside the door, the remaining few people looked at each other. Ji said faintly, "Greetings, senior brothers." There was a huge stone door outside the cave, but they didn't know what kind of stone door it was. They looked at each other. A person from the other side also walked out. He said faintly, "Hello, senior brothers." In the outside world, as long as they didn't have to fight, they wouldn't fight. Moreover, they also addressed each other as fellow disciples. Ji took a step forward slowly. At this moment, a few people landed on the ground. They looked at each other. Another group of people came. "We are from the Iron Profound sect. Greetings, senior brothers." The people who were originally in front of the mountain door said, "We are from the Green Mountain sect. Greetings, senior brothers." The people from the 3 sects greeted each other. Ji took a step forward and threw a punch in the direction of the stone door. At that moment, the huge stone door collided with each other with a dang sound. At this moment, the stone door slowly lifted up. The remaining people poured into the door like water. They saw another world inside the stone door. A huge lake surrounded them. A few Taishian sect disciples took a few steps forward, only to see countless black insects suddenly emerge from the ground. Those black insects were incomparably tall. They roared and gradually waved the 8 hairs on their bodies to retreat. At this moment, they ran in the direction of the crowd. At this moment, the disciple of the Iron Profound sect took a step forward. A ball of light appeared in his hand. He flew up and slapped with both hands. He slapped down heavily, and a loud bang was heard. In an instant, the wall in front of them slowly collapsed at this moment. The remaining people gradually protected themselves. At this moment, those insects rushed forward. They waved the treasured weapons in their hands and heavily slammed them on those insects. Several insects collided with each other, and a loud bang was heard. At this moment, those insects flew up and opened their mouths. Those insects ran forward and directly pounced on the disciples of the Iron Profound sect. After a loud crack, a scream was heard. That person let out a miserable cry. At this moment, he fell into a pool of blood. Their auras were not strong. At this moment, Jiyu looked around. At this moment, they picked up the treasured weapons beside them and flew in the direction of Jiyu. Jiyu took 2 steps forward. He suddenly turned around and stabbed one of the insects with his sword. At this moment, those insects emitted a lot of stench. After the rest of the insects saw that their brothers were affected, their eyes seemed to emit flames of anger. They chirped and approached Jiyu. Jiyu suddenly took a few steps back. The other disciples of the evolving temple also quickly retreated and stood in front of Jiyu. They slapped their hands on the ground. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning sounded in the sky. At this moment, those insects quickly crawled out from all directions and spat out threads. Very quickly, they wrapped around one of the disciples of the evolving temple. Those threads actually contained a huge amount of venom. Jiyu felt the power in their bodies. At this moment, the venom was crazily stealing the vitality in his body. There was no saving him. Jiyu immediately judged in his heart. He nodded to the people beside him. They looked at each other and decisively stopped looking at that person. They walked in another direction. Jiyu led everyone around him and quickly jumped up and landed on the ground. After a few ups and downs, Flying Dance took a few steps forward. They raised the treasured weapons in their hands and directly threw them out. Ji knew that there seemed to be no end to these insects. Although they were disciples of the mortal profound realm, they were not an endless number of people. After thinking for a while, he took out the Kuin Peng giant sword. After Jiyu's thought, it turned into a huge treasure weapon and fell on the ground. At this moment, the rest of the people surrounded him. Then, they looked at each other. They directly flew forward and completely surrounded Jiyu. After looking at each other, they quickly ran across the bridge formed by the giant sword. Jiyu said indifferently, "Be careful." After saying this, the rest of the people looked in Jiyu's direction gratefully. Jiyu said indifferently, "Those insects seem to be a little afraid when they are near the water." Soon, Jiyu understood why those insects were afraid of the lake. At this moment, the ground shook violently. A huge centipede appeared. At this moment, the centipedes turned around, wriggled their bodies, and looked in Jiyu's direction. At this moment, the countless tentacles under its feet hit the ground quickly. At this moment, countless earth spikes burst out and approached Jiyu's direction. Jiyu suddenly turned around. Before the treasure weapons in their hands returned, the rest of the disciples of the evolving divine palace used their defensive mystic skills to block those attacks for Jiyu. After two loud booms, Li Mu's eyes lit up. They quickly took 2 steps back. They looked in Jiyu's direction with burning eyes. At this moment, Jiyu slowly took a step forward. He said indifferently, "Be careful." After saying this, the people of the Iron Profound sect took the lead to attack the monster centipede. After a few ups and downs, they raised the treasure weapons in their hands and swung them forward heavily. Boom, 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 accompanied by 3 huge explosions. There was a hint of fear in their eyes. At this moment, the rest of the people walked in Jiyu's direction. After Jiyu waved his hand, the treasure weapon instantly appeared in Jiyu's hand. He turned around and took a step forward. He said indifferently, "The Iron Profound sect is in danger." Chapter 735. The Black Iron Sect disciple, standing in front of him, had a look of horror in his eyes. Just as they were about to dodge the monster's attack, they did not expect that the monster had already brandished its iron claws and sent a few of the Black Iron Sect's disciples flying. They fell into a pool of blood one after another, and a trace of blood flowed out of their mouths. Jiyu disappeared from the spot in an instant. The treasure weapon in his hand flew into the air in an instant and produced hundreds of other treasures in the blink of an eye. Mystical skill, 10,000 swords returned to 1. Ding! The host used the mystical skill, 10,000 swords returned to 1, and gained 1 by 999 experience points. The hundreds of long swords in the air also split up at this moment, and in an instant, the sky was covered by the treasures. The treasures quickly fell in the direction of the big bug. Boom, boom, boom. Following 3 loud sounds, the treasures gradually stacked up and continuously pierced into the big bug's stomach. After a loud roar, the beast roared. The treasures penetrated their bodies and let out a low roar. After letting out a shriek, it instantly collapsed to the ground. The people from the Black Iron Sect and the Green Mountain Sect surrounded Jiyu, followed by a loud rumble. They retreated 2 steps back, and Jiyu slowly stepped forward, forming countless treasures in the air. Jiyu stretched out his hand, and in an instant, those treasures gathered in Jiyu's hand, and he stabbed the Kuin Peng giant sword into his back. The disciples of Black Iron Sect came forward and cupped their fists. The leader of the disciples had a trace of embarrassment on his face. "Thank you, Brother Jiyu, but even so, we will not show mercy later." Seeing that his face was so resolute, Jiyu smiled faintly. The crowd continued to walk along the passage, and there were not many changes when they walked inside. At the end of the passage, there was a huge square. Just as everyone walked in, the ground suddenly shook violently. 2 rows of armored men slowly rose from the pools on both sides of the square. Jiyu looked at both sides, and those people suddenly opened their eyes, revealing blood-red pupils. With a wave of their hands, they picked up axes from their sides and swung them down. Instantly, The axes came crashing down on Meng Hao. A phantom image appeared in the air of those long axes. It pressed down heavily on Ji-Yu. Ji-Yu took a step to the side, and the Kuan Peng giant sword appeared in her hand. The disciples from the Black Iron School weren't willing to be outdone. They roared and took a step forward. Countless iron shields appeared in front of the crowd. At this moment, the bejeweled axe fell from the sky and collided with the iron shield. The Iron Qian sect disciples all spat out a mouthful of blood. They looked in front of them in disbelief, only to see a trace of blood flowing from the corners of their mouths. The armored men moved. Their thick bodies were several feet tall. When they stepped on the ground, it felt like the whole ground was shaking. Ji was facing an armored man. Her Kuan Peng giant sword and the armored man's long axe collided. The armored man didn't make any sound. He just walked forward and swung down the long axe in his hand. Ji sensed that there wasn't much Qian Qi in the armored man's body. Instead, it was a huge amount of Qian Qi that was constantly pressing down on him. He took a deep breath. At this moment, the surrounding stones also flew in all directions and collided with the stone pillars. He took a deep breath and looked in the direction of the armored man. This armored man was really too strong. Ji-Yu's Kuan Peng giant sword couldn't even leave a mark on him. He ran along the armored man's arm to his shoulder. He took the two spears and stabbed them towards the eyes of the armored man. A ray of red light shot out from the eyes of the armored man. The red light was very destructive, and it caused the surrounding stone pillars to collapse. The remaining armored men were also closing in on Ji-Yu at this moment. At this moment, the armored men were dragging their heavy bodies and gradually running towards Ji-Yu. Ji-Yu suddenly waved the bejeweled weapon in his hand. There was a loud boom, and an explosive force suddenly sounded in front of him. It spread out in all directions. The surrounding people flew backwards. Ji-Yu picked up the Kuan Peng giant sword in front of him and ran forward. He jumped and swung the sword down. With a boom, the armored man collapsed to the ground. Ji-Yu injected Qian Qi into the sky. Countless lightning bolts followed the Kuan Peng giant sword and spread out in all directions. He leaped high and chopped down the bejeweled weapon in his hand. Those lightning bolts carried a burning heat and burned the remaining armored men. The remaining people looked at him in awe. Was this the strength of an ordinary disciple? With this strength, he was more than enough to be an elder of each family. They cupped their fists and said to Ji-Yu in front of them, "Thank you for saving our lives, young master." At this moment, the house in front of them lit up. Ji-Yu took 2 steps forward. The disciples of Taishian's sect completely stopped in their tracks. Even if a treasure appeared, Ji-Yu had saved their lives several times. They did not intend to stop Ji-Yu's activities. Ji-Yu took 2 steps forward and opened the door in front of him. A creaking sound came from the door. Ji-Yu ran forward and raised his hands. Suddenly, a strong sense of crisis came from all directions. His body flashed and disappeared from the spot. In an instant, he was in front of a long sword. He reached out and grabbed the bejeweled weapon. There was a violent vibration in the surroundings. Ji-Yu threw the bejeweled weapon to another person. He held the life treasure in his hand with a smile on his face. Ji-Yu said indifferently, "This bejeweled weapon is yours." He handed the bejeweled weapon to his senior brother. The senior brother's eyes revealed a trace of excitement. Who could casually hand over a bejeweled weapon in such an environment? This was simply a dream. He was instantly excited. He took 2 steps forward and gathered the Qian Qi in his hand. Those armored men who had collapsed just now seemed to have been summoned. They stood up again and shrank to the size of a human and followed behind him. In his eyes, there was a heated expression. Ji-Yu said indifferently, "Let's go." The 2 groups of people from the Taishian sect and the Qingshan sect went in different directions. They didn't want to follow Ji-Yu anymore. Although it was safe, there was no point for them to enter the secret realm. Ji-Yu led the people from the evolving temple in another direction. After crossing the Tianshui River, they saw a towering mountain peak. It was as if there were countless golden spears and armored horses galloping inside. Ji-Yu waved his hand heavily, and the remaining people began to run forward at this moment. Along the mountain path, it was difficult for them to move forward. At this moment, a bolt of lightning sounded in the sky. The people around looked up at the sky, as if the lightning would strike them in the next moment. Jiyu glanced around. A cloud of thick fog slowly rose from his hands, and an array was formed in an instant. He waved his hand, and the people around him jumped up and ran to the peak of the mountain. The rest of the people stood up at this moment. The mountain shook violently. A headless armored horse slowly walked out at this moment. There was a headless soldier sitting on the horse. Then, another group of headless soldiers ran forward. They set their eyes on Jiyu and raised the weapons in their hands. The rest of the people rode the horses in front of them and charged in Jiyu's direction. Jiyu raised the treasured weapon in his hand. The disciples of the evolving temple poured in like water. They couldn't deal with the monsters, but couldn't they deal with these small corpses? One of the disciples sent a kick forward. His Xian skill strengthened the Xian Qi in his leg. His kick landed heavily on the opponent's body. After the kick landed, the Xian Qi in the disciple's body exploded. The corpse was like a golden body. It didn't understand. The rest of the horses quickly ran forward. They suddenly attacked the disciples of the evolving temple. They slowly took out their precious weapons and swung them up, colliding with each other. There was a loud bang. The surrounding people were sent flying backward at this time. They slid out of the ground and looked in Jiyu's direction with burning eyes. In an instant, they disappeared from where they were. All the disciples of the evolving temple didn't expect that these corpses could make such a powerful move. They suddenly turned around and formed layers of pentagrams under their feet. Above those pentagrams, vines grew and wrapped around the corpses. The disciples didn't dare to be careless. They quickly picked up the treasured weapons in their hands and chopped at the corpses. After God knows how many loud bangs, they finally relaxed. Jiyu prepared some recovery pills for them. After taking the pills, they felt refreshed. They slowly walked forward. After a while, they entered an underground tomb. Hong, the door slowly opened, and they all looked forward. What's in here? Chapter 736. Jiyu looked at the corpses and thought that there must be a powerful array in the mountain supporting these corpses so that they could move freely. He closed his eyes. They thought about everything around them and where the problem was. They looked at each other. Jiyu said calmly, "Let's go in." In a flash, he jumped into it. They looked at each other. They saw that there was a bottomless abyss at the end of the path. Jiyu closed his eyes and used his mental strength to explore the valley. He saw a ray of light at the end of the valley. They all jumped into the valley and took a deep breath. Jiyu said calmly, "Everyone, follow me." After saying that, Jiyu took the lead and jumped into the valley. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. This was simply too bold. Jiyu passed through the valley and landed on the ground. He raised his head and looked around, only to see countless black shadows swaying around. From both sides of the valley, there seemed to be countless vengeful spirits reaching out in Jiyu's direction, trying to drag him into hell. Jiyu snorted coldly. The mental strength in his mind suddenly exploded and flew in all directions. Right at that moment, the surrounding area began to tremble. They turned around and looked at Jiyu. At this moment, the people around him took a few steps forward, and he disappeared from where he was in an instant. In the blink of an eye, the rest of the people took 2 steps in Jiyu's direction. When they saw the disciples jump down one after another, the rest of the people jumped down at the same time. They also saw the same thing as Jiyu. They kept passing through the bottomless abyss. Jiyu landed on the ground and looked around. There was a large palace at the bottom of the bottomless abyss. It seemed to have been asleep for a long time. Perhaps because they believed that no one would be able to pass through the tunnel. They slowly opened their eyes at this moment and looked around. Jiyu reached out and picked up the treasures on the ground. He looked at the people around him. At this moment, the people around him slowly ran forward. Jiyu suddenly turned around. The dark force in his hand suddenly lit up. A huge wave of dark force rushed to the sky and gathered in Jiyu's hand. Jiyu looked in the direction of the light. At this moment, countless fire dragons were circling and flying in Jiyu's direction. Jiyu's Kuan Peng giant sword slashed down at this moment. At this moment, the fire dragons scattered in all directions, and Jiyu fell to the ground. At this moment, the formation flashed brightly. 5 pentagrams suddenly appeared in the middle of the formation. The pentagrams suddenly shone brightly. At this moment, countless flames covered the sky like a tsunami. They directly swallowed the flames in the cave. At this moment, the people around Jiyu surrounded her. He raised his hands and slammed them heavily on the ground. At this moment, the flames quickly swallowed everything. Ji took a few steps forward and walked into the palace. She saw rows of treasures lying peacefully around. The eyes of the disciples who dared to jump down all revealed a trace of excitement. They pounced on the treasures and touched them as if they were attracted to them. After keeping all the treasures under their bodies, they turned their heads. At this moment, a beam of light appeared in his dantian. The elixir was spinning rapidly at this moment. Ji took 2 steps forward. At this moment, the people around her also stepped forward and kept all the treasures in the surroundings into their storage rings. Ji walked out of the door. He disappeared on the spot in an instant. After a while, he followed the people around him and directly walked through the door. At this moment, he disappeared on the spot. He directly raised his head and looked around. The sky started to shake rapidly. Jiyu shouted and led the rest of the people to run out of the door. The rest of the people quickly followed behind Jiyu and walked to the top of the mountain wall. No one had a flying Xian skill, so even though they had obtained quite a few artifacts, they were unable to obtain anything. Jiyu revealed a smile at the corners of her mouth. At this moment, a few people beside him slowly walked forward. At this moment, they exchanged glances with each other. Jiyu locked the treasures on the top of the valley. As the raging flames appeared, a slanted passageway was burned open in the bottomless abyss. They used their treasure artifacts to stare at the ground and gradually climb up. They stood on the ground. At this moment, they landed on the ground and looked at each other. Gradually, they took 2 steps forward. Jiyu glanced at the people beside her. Just as they walked up the valley, they suddenly looked at each other. Suddenly, a row of people came forward at this moment. They looked at each other. Jiyu said indifferently, "Everyone, please make way." After saying this, the people beside her gradually took a few steps forward. A smile appeared on their faces. They said to Jiyu indifferently, "What treasures did you get down there just now? Ha ha ha, take them down for me. Why are you talking nonsense? Just go ahead." At that moment, a few disciples from other sects stepped forward and pounced on Jiyu, surrounding him. Jiyu abruptly got up and disappeared from where he was in an instant. With a wave of his hand, the rest of the disciples also flew forward. They stepped on the ground, and a huge pentagram appeared on the ground. Jiyu took 2 steps forward and grabbed one of the people's neck with one hand. He kept gasping for breath. "Please let me go. I was wrong." He seemed to be unable to breathe. He stretched out his hand and looked at the sky as if he wanted to grab something. The rest of the people rushed in. They raised the treasures in their hands and charged forward. At this moment, countless people fell into a pool of blood. They spat out blood. At this moment, Jiyu raised her hands. At this moment, a thundercloud appeared in the sky. Countless lightning bolts fell at this moment. A group of people sat on the big birds. The big birds screeched and kept flapping their wings. They flew to the ground and jumped down from the big birds. Many people picked up the treasures beside them. After pulling out the treasures, they locked their eyes on Jiyu. In an instant, they flew forward. They pulled out the treasures and ran in Jiyu's direction. The big birds in the air emitted a ball of fire one after another. They quickly rotated their bodies and directly hit the ground, causing a loud bang to resound. The flames danced in all directions. At this moment, the fragments of the flames flew forward quickly. Those fragments cut their cheeks. Jiyu turned around and instantly disappeared from where he was standing. He waved his hand heavily. The people beside him quickly walked forward and waved their mystic skills. Boom, boom, boom. 3 loud sounds were heard. He took a step back and slapped his hands on the ground. Countless balls of fire rose from the ground and directly swallowed the few people in the flames. Jiyu's few senior and junior brothers were also wrapped in the flames and came forward. At this moment, the people of the evolving temple slowly ran forward. The remaining people landed on the ground. They raised their hands, and the treasures were instantly in their hands. A few people fell in a pool of blood. At this moment, the remaining few people gradually came forward. They pulled out their treasures at the same time. In an instant, they charged in Jiyu's direction. Jiyu said seriously, "Mystic skill, raging inferno." More and more people started to surround Jiyu, and they gradually surrounded her. The remaining people were directly carried on Jiyu's shoulders. After a few ups and downs, they directly ran forward. Not long after, they stopped in front of the big house in front of them. After stopping, they looked at the people in front of them. He glanced at the person beside him. At this moment, the sound of a flute rang out in the air. More and more people walked out from all directions. They jumped down in an instant. He took out treasures from his arms and picked up the treasures beside him. The people behind him anxiously shouted, "Catch him. He has a lot of treasures on him." "Senior Jiyu, what should we do now?" After hearing this, the two people landed on the ground. At this moment, they looked at each other. Jiyu stretched out his hands. At this moment, a ball of flames appeared. "If you want us to die, then let's die together." "Oh no, he's going to self-destruct." It was unknown who took the lead to shout this. At this moment, the remaining people stopped and looked at each other. A ball of flames appeared in front of them. Jiyu said indifferently, "Be careful." After roaring these words, the people beside him flew forward and landed on the tree. Unexpectedly, Jiyu had merely fainted with his spear and released raging flames incinerate the city. Raging flames burned the land like a tsunami. The flames engulfed everything around her. After a few leaps, Jiyu disappeared from the spot. Chapter 737. Jiyu stepped in front of the trial stone. He abruptly turned around, and a deep voice enveloped the entire plaza. "Today, for those who chased after the divine evolution palace, Jiyu will definitely pay a visit to your sex in the future." After saying that, a white light flashed, and Jiyu disappeared on the spot. After a short moment, Jiyu disappeared. When he reappeared, he had already returned to the divine evolution peak. Countless people quickly walked up and looked at Jiyu with burning eyes. From their eyes, it seemed like they were asking Jiyu what they should do next. "Who were the people who chased after us?" "They seem to be people from the First Heaven sect." Jiyu said indifferently, "First Heaven sect. I'll remember that." Chunfeng is also there. It seems to be led by the Misty Peaks, Chunfeng. Jiyu clenched his fist and smiled faintly. "All right, reporting to senior brother." Now, the majority of the people addressed Jiyu as senior brother. They glanced at each other. Reporting to senior brother, Master wants to send senior brother to the First Heaven sect to participate in the Righteous Path Alliance Conference. "Oh, with the demonic beasts running amok in the 100 Beast Mountain, we need to unite all forces." The corners of Jiyu's mouth curled into a smile. "That's good. However, in the next few days, the leader of the disciples will be chosen in the main hall." That night, Jiyu circulated the flame mantra once again. The profound energy in his body was surging unceasingly. A bird's cry sounded. Jiyu felt that something was amiss. After a few leaps, he arrived at the back mountain. A disciple wearing a mask turned around. "Who are you? Why have you come to visit my sect in the middle of the night?" "You're Jiyu." He suddenly turned around and locked his gaze on Jiyu. Profound skill, demonic blood guillotine. The blood guillotine spun rapidly. The enchanting red light suddenly flashed, and a fishy smell came from the opponent's treasure. The Kuan Peng sword in Jiyu's hand shone brightly. Countless bolts of lightning came from the heavens and earth. Etion's eyes widened. Royal Demon Sword? After the breakthrough, Jiyu directly reached the peak of the 5th level of the human profound realm. When the Royal Demon Sword appeared, Zhu Xie dodged. Even though the flying guillotine was fed with the blood of ordinary people, It had no choice but to retreat when it encountered the Kuin Peng giant sword that borrowed the righteous chi of heaven and earth. With one strike, the flying guillotine was sent flying. Yi Tian stood rooted to the ground in shock. You've already reached the peak of the 5th level of the mortal profound realm. What a frightening cultivation speed. No wonder martial uncle Yi took a fancy to you. The remaining might of the royal demon sword arrived. Yi Tian's skin was torn open one after another. He sensed that his life was in danger. Don't kill me, don't kill me. Senior Marshal Brother, I was wrong. I was wrong. Please spare me. Ji Yu said with a cold face. If it was before, I wouldn't have killed you. The sword slashed across Yi Tian's neck, and blood gushed out like a fountain. There was still a trace of unwillingness in his eyes. Ji Yu waved her hand and brought Yi Tian's corpse back to the Yixin Peak. Seeing Ji return with Yi Tian on her back, everyone had a faint smile on their faces. It seemed that this guy didn't have a good relationship with others. Yi Tian from the Immortal Pill Peak is dead? It's good that he died. Who told him to bully us? Is the one carrying him Ji Yu? So what? It's said that our senior martial brother is back this time. Who is it? Tu Lai. What? The one who could cut off the head of a 6th level human profound realm expert with one hand? From the looks of it, Ji Yu is just a pitiful person waiting to be killed by Tu Lai. A white-haired old man with a ruddy complexion walked out of the hall slowly with a murderous look in his eyes. The disciples of the evolving divine palace stopped talking when they saw this old ancestor. Ji Yu threw the corpse on the ground. The eyes of the Pill Peak's elder, Gu, kept twitching. Sky Rock Elder, who was also the Pill Peak's elder with the highest authority, asked, "Who killed my beloved disciple?" Chun Feng. Ji Yu's face did not turn red as her heart skipped a beat. What? The successor of the ethereal immortal sect? Damn it. Our evolving divine palace didn't provoke him, but he dared to kill our people. The ethereal immortal sect is irreconcilable. Sky Rock Elder reached out his hand, and Yi Tian's corpse floated in front of him. Royal Demon Sword. It's really the ethereal immortal sect. Pass down my order. From today onwards, our evolving divine palace will fight to the death with the ethereal immortal sect. Sky Rock Elder's righteous words made the disciples below feel indignant. A new disciple asked his senior brother, "Senior brother, are we going to start a war with the ethereal immortal sect?" Start my ass. We don't even know where they are. Moreover, their forces have already spread to the 4 major domains. Then what does the old ancestor mean? What he means is that in the future, we'll sneak attack whenever we can. If we can't, we'll run. Anyway, it's a principle. No matter who the opponent is, it's fine if we can't beat them. We can't lose our face. Skyrock Elder glanced at Ji Yu. Follow me in. Ji Yu walked into the hall. There was a white-browed and kind-eyed god statue on both sides. Skyrock Elder said faintly, "I don't believe that Qin Feng would kill Yi Tian. Yi Tian's cultivation isn't even worth a bug in front of him. Although I don't know how you did it. Do you know how big of a sin it is to secretly kill a fellow disciple?" A huge pressure surged toward Ji Yu. Even after leveling up, Ji Yu could still feel her aura surging. Peak Master. He was really killed by Chun Feng with a royal demon sword. It wasn't easy for me to steal his corpse back. Look. Ji Yu pulled up her sleeves, revealing the scars on her body. Secretly killing a fellow disciple was a capital crime in the evolving divine palace. However, when Ji Yu was secretly killed, the sect rules couldn't save her. As for that fellow who disappeared, no one knew where his corpse was. In short, he was hiding. Skyrock coldly looked at Ji Yu. He didn't know why, but when he saw Ji Yu today, Skyrock Elder felt a trace of uneasiness in his heart. Tu Lai was the disciple he had decided to be the leader, and the 7 peaks all had their eyes on this position. He wasn't worried about the others, but he was the one who ordered Yi Tian to kill Ji Yu. Now, he returned safe and sound with Yi Tian's corpse. Could it be that Ji Yu was really that lucky? At this moment, Yi Chumei strode in from the side hall. "Senior brother, Ji Yu is my disciple. Why do you need a teacher?" When Yi Chumei walked in, the pressure on Ji Yu disappeared. The two glanced at each other. Second brother, go back and properly teach your disciple. As for Yi Tian, this old man will find a chance to avenge him. Yi Chume brought Ji Yu out of the hall. He suddenly thought of something and looked at Ji Yu with a deep gaze. You really didn't kill Yi Tian? Ji Yu met his gaze with a determined look. Master, I'm willing to swear on my Tao heart. Yi Chume chuckled. All right, we're master and disciple. How can I not believe you? You saved my life back then. I have a human mysterious heaven pearl here. When you fight in a few days, first exhaust his spirit energy. When it's about time, release it. Thank you, master. Haha, you're really smart. Ji Yu suddenly moved forward and stroked her forehead. Yi Chume trembled. This wound is healing well. Yi Chume blushed and turned around. She shyly said, How dare you be so impudent? Hee, master, this disciple is just worried about you. Yi Chume thought to herself, how can this kid be so daring? Right then, another elder of Elixir Peak walked in hurriedly. The Evolving Temple's eighth brother, Zhu Haoan, also brought his disciples here. As if he was staring at a thief, he stared at the passers-by. Mayor Little You, my eighth peak wants to stay at your place tonight. It'll be convenient for us to go to the saint's ceremony tomorrow. Since Elder Zhu is here, those lowly people naturally won't dare to come close. Junior sister naturally can't ask for more. There's a trace of satisfaction in his eyes. Last time, Ji stood up for him and taught Lu Zhang a lesson. This made him very satisfied with this disciple. Moreover, he didn't get along well with the Peak Lord. The two looked at each other and smiled. Another morning, Ji Yu held a blade of grass in her mouth as she lay on a huge rock and watched the people coming and going. The Evolving Temple's leader ceremony was one of the most eye-catching events in the Evolving Temple. Not only the people of the Evolving Temple, but even the Star Soul Empire under the banner of the Evolving Temple also sent people to watch the ceremony. But they didn't know that the Star Soul Empire was now in Ji Yu's hands. Powerful armies were stationed at the foot of Tianpeng Mountain. Ji Yu glanced at the Great General. The Great General's face was full of surprise. Why is he here? But he straightened his face and looked elsewhere. He didn't dare to say anything. The people coming and going were decorating the main hall in front of them. Ji Yu yawned and walked around. There were still a few days before the start of the competition. Since she had nothing to do, Ji Yu ran to the White Beast mountain range outside the Divine Peak in a few leaps. He sat cross-legged on the ground. A 7th-grade demonic beast lay at his feet. Just now, he heard a rumbling sound from his stomach. He suddenly attacked and hit one of the demonic beasts to the ground. He was roasting meat. Smelling the aroma of the meat, he thought that he would have something to eat soon. A few small demonic beasts looked at Ji Yu with burning eyes, as if they wanted a share of the food. Ji Yu smiled at them. Do you want to eat? Those small demonic beasts immediately ran forward. Ji Yu suddenly retracted her hand. I'm not giving it. I'm just playing. A little fun could make Ji Yu happy for a while. Chapter 738. Suddenly, the sound of a fight came closer and closer. Ji Yu just stood up. A red light flashed. A young girl appeared behind him. A few men in black followed closely behind. They suddenly realized that Ji Yu was also present, so they stopped in their tracks. Human profound realm? Hee, it's just a lousy brat. How dare he interfere with our business? Brothers, get rid of them. Every black, clothed man emitted a golden light. Ji Yu glanced at them, unexpectedly meeting so many Earth profound realm experts at once. The thing that Master gave to him to save his life in a few days, now he had to use it. He took out a bead from his sleeve. Several black, clothed men's eyes revealed a shocked expression. Not good, it's a human profound orb. Senior brother, what's there to be afraid of? As long as we steal the things on that little girl, it's enough. Junior brother, this human profound orb can directly absorb a person's soul. This brat actually has a treasure left behind from ancient times. Brothers, let's retreat. Ji Yu coldly snorted. Leave? You can't leave. The human profound orb emitted a dark fog. A cold wind blew, and giggles spread throughout the tomb. Who would have thought that a little human profound realm brat would actually have an ancient treasure. If this news were to spread, who knows how many people would want to capture him and interrogate him. Maybe they would be able to obtain some shocking treasure. Several people had just mobilized their profound chi, but were stopped by the human profound orb's strong suction force. Jiyu thought, this evolving temple should have a great relationship with the remnant soul in the spirit rope. Too scary, my profound chi was sucked dry. No, I don't want to die. I beg you. Let me go, we'll leave immediately. After a moment, 6 dried corpses were lying on the ground. With a cracking sound, the human mystic orb also turned into powder. Jiyu abruptly turned her head and stared coldly at the young girl. Who are you? The red-clothed girl looked at Jiyu curiously. Suddenly, a smile appeared on her face. Kid, you seem to have a lot of prized artifacts on you. I'm Li Sijiao. Li Sijiao was the arrogant saintess of Divine Black. No matter how powerful the saintess was normally, Jiyu could see that the profound energy in her body was scattered. She was obviously poisoned. What do you want? For the first time in her life, this proud daughter of heaven felt fear. Kill you. Jiyu's eyes were cold. This made Li Sijiao, who had been a genius since she was young, tremble involuntarily. She curled up her body bit by bit. Abruptly, Li Sijiao grabbed a handful of sand from the ground, aimed at Jiyu's eyes, and scattered it. During this process, he quickly circulated the remaining profound energy in his body. Like an injured little rabbit, he quickly retreated. But Jiyu was prepared. He quickly closed his eyes and let the sand fall to the ground. His sensitive ears twitched slightly. He aimed at the direction of the little rabbit and appeared in front of her in a flash. He unceremoniously kicked her in the chest. Li Sijiao groaned and fell to the ground. She wanted to pick up her weapon to fight back against Jiyu. Jiyu reacted quickly and kicked Li Sijiao's arm. She kicked Li Sijiao's precious weapon aside and stepped on Li Sijiao's chest. She was about to die. Li Sijiao's mind spun quickly. Wait. Jiyu flew over on his sword. I'm willing to hand over the pill left by the ancestor. Jiyu snorted. After you die, it's still mine. Me. I'll let you do whatever you want with me. At this point, Li Sijiao's beautiful eyes trembled as a soul-stirring feeling surged through her heart. I'll cooperate with you. The gentle voice, the faint fragrance, and the starry beauty in Li Sijiao's eyes. If it was any other man, their heart would soften. However, Ji was not one of them. He had experienced so many things, and he also had the system. His mind was as firm as a rock. Pa! Jiyu slapped the face of the divine black saintess who all the young men and even the old men in the cultivation world wanted to press to the ground. Li Sijiao had never expected that she would not be able to bewitch Jiyu even though she had killed so many experts with that face of hers. The reason why Jiyu had slapped her was because he knew that she had used a bewitching technique on him. Pain was the best way to dispel this technique, but slapping his own face was too painful. He could only slap her face. Seeing that Jiyu wanted to kill her, Li Sijiao directly shouted, I can promise you 3 things. I swear on my heavenly soul. In the past, swearing was like eating lettuce. But in this world, one had to bet everything. I'm still the saintess of the divine black sect. I can help you do 3 things as long as you spare my life. This tempting offer made Jiyu stop. If the saintess was willing to work for him. In the future, after calculating the pros and cons, Jiyu pointed the Kuan Pong sword at the saintess' neck. You can swear now. I'm Jiyu. The saintess bit her finger, letting blood drip to the ground. A Taiji halo appeared on the ground. I, Li Sijiao, ranked 7th among the 12 saintesses of the divine black sect, swear on my Tao heart that I will promise Jiyu 3 things from today onwards. If I betray you, may the heavens strike me with lightning, and I will not enter the 3 souls 5 Tao. A faint clap of thunder came from the sky. Jiyu put the Kuan Pong sword into his storage ring. You can do one thing now. What is it? In this life, you can't take revenge or hurt me. You can't ask others to do anything against me either. Jiyu had cut off all paths of retreat for the saintess. She had to do this for the rest of her life. The saintess snorted and handed a pill to Ji. Ji gave her a voice transmission talisman. Remember, don't contact me first. Wait for me to contact you. The saintess nodded unwillingly. Scram. Li Jiao looked at Ji in front of her. She couldn't help but feel resentment in her heart. However, what did Ji want to do here? Could it be that he wants to take the medicinal pill here? That would be stupid. The saintess planned to hide. If Ji exploded and died here, she would be able to take back the pill. A smug smile appeared on her face. If I still sense you in the white beast mountain forest within 10 breaths, I will kill you. It seemed that Ji was serious. The saintess waved her hand, and a golden talisman appeared. I will remember this humiliation. I will return it to you in the future. After the golden talisman burned, the space around them distorted. Ji confirmed 3 times that the saintess's aura had disappeared. She took out the pill and sat cross-legged on the ground. After consuming the elixir, Ji could only feel that his profound energy had surged wildly. Along with a hint of pain, Ji sensed that his strength had increased greatly. She broke through to the 6th level of the human profound realm in an instant. A few days later, Ji stepped into the middle of the square, where 4 viewing platforms were built. Everyone was sitting on the platforms, waiting for the arrival of the leader's disciple. Loud discussions filled the square, making it very lively. There were even some mortals who had gotten their hands on snacks and were selling all kinds of food. However, there were also endless cases of people raising prices and swindling people. Seeing that most of the leaders had arrived, the canopy elder waved his hand. Thousands of auspicious birds soared in the sky. The 4 sacred flags fluttered without wind. The evolving temple's sacred ceremony. We are honored to have the sect leader of the North Sea sect, Gu Changsheng. Ji looked at the most prominent spot in the audience. An eagle circled in the sky and landed on Gu Changsheng's shoulder. He chuckled. This is all thanks to the evolving temple. The saintess of the divine black sect, Li Jiao. The saintess of the divine black sect was standing next to him. The entire square was in an uproar. Looking at this so-called holy maiden, Ji's lips curled into a smile. An almost insane thought suddenly appeared in Ji's mind. And the elders of the various sections. Everyone waved their hands at the crowd in the spectator seats. Today, the evolving temple is choosing the leader's disciple. The 9 great peaks have sent their proud disciples. According to the rules of our ancestors, this ceremony is divided into 3 tests. The first test, the disciples of the 9 great peaks must enter the 10,000 Beast Tower to obtain a jade token. This is a battle of courage. The people on the viewing platform began to discuss animatedly. The 10,000 Beast Tower suppresses the beasts in the 100 Beast Mountain Forest. I wonder how many experts have died in the 10,000 Beast Tower. Silence. The canopy elder roared. The crowd became solemn. The second test, those who obtain jade tokens must lead the remaining people to fight for jade tokens. The one with the most jade tokens wins. This is a battle of wits. Finally, those who haven't been eliminated will fight in the arena. The last person left will be the leader of the evolving temple. After the canopy elder finished speaking, the disciples of the 9 great peaks jumped onto the arena. The canopy elder glanced at the elders of the various sections. Everyone released Xian Shi at the same time, and the small tower suddenly became 10,000 feet tall. The constant roaring sounds coming from inside directly struck everyone's heartstrings. The 9 people jumped into the tower. The first level of the 10,000 Beast Tower was empty, but it was also a place for people to breathe. After Ji entered, she went straight for Tu Lai. Tu Lai glanced at him. It's you? Chapter 739. Ji chuckled and patted him on the shoulder. Eldest senior brother, to be honest, I'm just here to accompany you. You know how strong I am, so don't let your junior brother die here. You'll have to bear with me. As timid as a mouse. The rest of the peak disciples burst into laughter. Only Ma Feng from the Mystic Skills Peak followed behind Ji. Our Mystic Skills Peak also has the same attitude. We're your loyal followers. Ji smiled and didn't say anything. Two Lie's mood improved greatly. You two follow me carefully. If you get lost, I won't care about you. After saying that, Two Lie swaggered up to the second floor. Ji quickly followed him. The rest of the peak disciples also quickly followed. The world on the second floor. It was burning fiercely with raging flames. They didn't see any demon beasts, so everyone used their own protective magic weapons. Ji stood beside Two Lie and didn't even have the strength to use a protective magic weapon. The rest of the peak disciples snorted coldly. Ji glanced around and saw a black shadow swimming in the sea of fire. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly as he flicked the silver needle in his hand. The silver needle entered the sea of fire at a speed that no one noticed. A heart-wrenching sound came from the sea of fire. A red snake leaped out of the sea of fire with a pair of bone wings on its back. The spectators outside the tower were already in an uproar. The Inferno Demon Dragon. It's the Inferno Demon Dragon. It killed Taoist Qingwei of the 5th stage of the human profound realm. This myriad demon tower is really full of danger. A pair of beautiful eyes stared at Jiyu in the porch mirror. She clenched the corner of her clothes tightly and gritted her teeth as she muttered in her heart. Jiyu, you're actually here. Good, good, demon dragon, bite him to death. Li Sijiao kept cheering for the demon dragon. Inside the mirror, the demon dragon touched the flames and sniffed as if it had smelled something delicious. The dragon head turned and stared at Jiyu. Two Lie thought that the demon dragon was targeting him. So, he summoned a ball of fire with both of his hands and fought the demon dragon head-on. The disciple of the 7th peak smiled faintly. Big Brother Two Lie is really amazing. You're not like some people who only know how to hide behind others. Jiyu ignored him and shouted to Ma Feng, "Quick, let's escape while Senior Brother Two Lie is holding them off for us." The few disciples behind him reacted one after another. They also planned to abandon Two Lie and escape to the next floor. Seeing that Jiyu was about to leave, Mo Long became anxious. He shook off Two Lie and rushed towards Jiyu. Seeing that they were about to enter the next floor, how could Jiyu stay here? Looking at the disciple of the 7th peak in front of her, Jiyu swung her hand and sealed the disciple's acupuncture points with her silver needles. His spiritual energy was instantly sealed. Jiyu appeared in front of him in a flash. "Junior brother, let's go quickly." Me. The demon dragon opened his bloody mouth. Jiyu made up her mind and pushed the disciple of the 7th peak behind her. Everyone outside the tower sucked in a breath of cold air. He did not expect that Jiyu, who looked so harmless, would actually be so vicious and merciless. The demon dragon carefully chewed twice. By the time he wanted to chase after them, they had already disappeared. Crack! Jiyu stepped into a land of ice. The bone-piercing cold silently circled around this land. There was no wind and no snow. Only the invisible cold was left. After the remaining 6 disciples entered, they were also caught off guard. Just a moment ago, they were facing a mountain of blades and a sea of flames. Now, they were suddenly placed in a world of ice and snow. Everyone was looking for the stairs that led to the next floor. Suddenly, the layer of ice on the ground broke apart. A huge black tortoise appeared in front of everyone. Moo! The black tortoise was like a mountain. It stood in the same place and did not move. The disciple of the 4th peak noticed that there seemed to be a secret door hidden under the black tortoise. Brothers, the mechanism must be hidden behind the black tortoise. Why don't we work together to force it back? Everyone pondered for a moment. Indeed, they all wanted to eliminate each other. However, if they did not work together, they would not be able to force the black tortoise back. Why don't we form an alliance? Facing Jiyu's suggestion, it was obvious that Two Lie was tempted. The light of the demon tower shone brightly. Moo! Suddenly, a bolt of lightning appeared between heaven and earth. Boom! A pool of bright red blood appeared on the ground. The ground was covered with a thick layer of ice. The demonic red blood was very eye-catching on this ice ground. Everyone moved quickly toward the black tortoise. Ji saw that there seemed to be a small door left in the crack. He looked at the people around him. Suddenly, a plan appeared in his mind. A few disciples from the other peaks were heading toward the black tortoise. Ji aimed at the crack under the black tortoise. When the red light hit the black tortoise, it quickly flew toward the crack. The disciples of the other peaks saw Ji rushing over, but at this time, they could not withdraw their Xian Qi and leave. They could only open their mouths and curse. Ji, you shameless be***starred. We are fighting with the demon beast. You ran away alone. Ji, if we can get there, we will definitely kill you. The people outside the 10,000 demon tower were even more stunned. It was not that they had never seen such despicable methods in the past disciple selection. However, it was the first time they saw such a method being used so openly. The next moment, Ji suddenly turned around. Sky-devouring lightning. It's the sky-devouring lightning. Oh my God, he actually used the sky-devouring lightning on his fellow disciples. Boom, boom, boom. Several loud sounds were heard. The disciples of the other peaks were shrouded in smoke one after another. Ji pulled himself away and quickly leaped under the black tortoise. He extended his hand and opened the wooden door. The space above the third floor was completely sealed. However, there were no demon beasts on this floor. In front of Ji, there were only 3 beads. He reached out and grabbed the 3 beads. Tu Lai came with 3 disciples from the other peaks. Ji, you are really ruthless. Ma Feng was sweating profusely as he followed behind Tu Lai. Ji nodded at him. With a light shake of his hand, 2 white jade tokens appeared. He casually threw 1 jade token into the crowd. When the crowd saw the jade token, they immediately rushed forward to fight for it. Tu Lai opened his hand. A red butcher knife appeared in his hand. 7 or 8 red snakes flew out. The disciples of the other peaks were immediately entangled by the snakes. Tu Lai turned his head to look at Ma Feng. Ma Feng smiled and spread his hands with an innocent look on his face. Ji tossed the remaining jade tokens into Ma Feng's hands. Let's go. The 2 of them crushed the jade tokens at the same time. With a flash of white light, Ji appeared on top of a palace called the Hollow Jade Palace. He immediately hid himself. After a while, a few disciples in white robes rushed over. They looked around. That's strange. Just now, I clearly felt a trace of strangeness. Senior brother, did something go wrong? After the patrolling disciples left, a voice suddenly sounded. Why are you still hiding? They're all gone. Ji finally showed himself. I didn't expect that you had already prepared a trap for me. The old man glanced at Ji. Ha! Since you want to hinder my brother's plan, I have no choice but to wrong you. Go to hell. All of a sudden, his gaze turned fierce. He immediately pounced in Ji's direction. Damn it. That old man must have used a teleportation array formation to send him here. After a few exchanges, Ji suddenly came to a stop. He waved the Kuan Peng giant sword in his hand, and a huge destructive force covered the sky and earth. On the square, the disciples of all the sects stared at the brilliance in the sky. They seemed to be waiting to see who would come back first. Bang! A corpse fell to the ground. He was wearing a white robe. It's a disciple of the Zhengyi sect. What? Who could kill a disciple of the Tianyi sect? Ma Feng passed through the brilliance with a smile. The old man smiled. Not bad. The disciples of the Xuanjin Peak have made progress. Then, after a while, Tu Lai passed through the brilliance with a head and fell heavily to the ground. He kept spitting out blood. Chen Feng, this is Chun Feng's head. He is known as a rare genius of the ethereal palace, but he died in Tu Lai's hands. Everyone looked at Tu Lai in horror. Just how powerful was his demonic arts? Just as everyone was shocked by Tu Lai's killing of Chen Feng, the brilliance flashed again. Ji, wearing a black robe, quickly passed through it. She waved her hand and a corpse fell to the ground. When the old man was about to announce the next match, he suddenly froze. Then, a murderous intent appeared all over his body. Ji, stop it. It turned out that after Ji threw the corpse on the ground, he did not stop. The long sword in his hand flew with the wind, and with a whistling sound, it flew towards Tu Lai. The canopy old man had never expected that Ji would be so vicious and merciless. Who was Tu Lai? He sensed that his life was threatened and subconsciously rolled to the side. Boom! A big hole appeared on the green bricks in the square. What? She is in the 6th level of the human profound realm. She broke through. A disciple cried out in surprise. The saintess also stood up. When they met yesterday, Ji was in the 4th level of the human profound realm. Today, she skipped a big stage and became an expert in the 6th level of the human profound realm. How could she not be surprised? Since the Great War of the Demon Gods, such a monstrous genius was very rare. The saintess held the silk in her hand. Although she hated Ji, if she could bring Ji into the sect, a thought kept rising in the saintess' mind. As for Tu Lai, he was just as frightened as the saintess. He had become a human profound realm expert in 100 years with great difficulty. But he was definitely not a match for a 6th level human profound realm expert with 5 elements. Chapter 740. Old man Tian Peng quickly walked towards the two of them and shouted, "Don't be afraid." He must have taken some elixir. His aura is still unstable. He's no match for you. If Tu Lai wasn't injured, Ji might not be his match. However, they didn't know that Ji was still holding back. Seeing that old man Tian Peng was about to arrive, Ji threw the sword in her hand. The sword streaked across the sky at an astonishing speed. In the blink of an eye, it was in front of Tu Lai. Tu Lai tapped the ground lightly and retreated quickly. Suddenly, he felt an intense pain. Looking at his lower abdomen, blood kept flowing out. He trembled as he turned around to take a look. He saw Ma Feng standing behind him. He still had that unquestionable smile on his face. When old man Tian Peng landed on the ground, it was too late. Tu Lai didn't have much Xian energy left after fighting with Chen Feng. After receiving such a heavy blow, his body fell with the wind. Old man Tian Peng grabbed Tu Lai and threw him aside. Ma Feng flew out like a deflated balloon and crashed into several stone pillars before stopping. However, he didn't look like a human anymore. His eyes were wide open. "Get up," Tu Lai said weakly. Father, get up. Our two family doesn't have a useless person like you. Get up. You're our leader's disciple." Tu Lai twitched a few times and stopped moving. Old man Tian Peng fell silent. The black-robed old man and the Xuanjin Peak elder immediately appeared in front of Ji. "Two man, the result of the competition has been decided. You've lost. You'll have the title of Old Man Tian Peng and the Tian Peng relic of the Evolving Temple." Old man Tian Peng, who was also two man, laughed. "Ha ha, did you plan to force me to take the Evolving Temple's relic? But do you think I don't know?" He turned around and looked at the viewing platform. "Saintess, elder, please save me." Li Sijiao saw that Ji was staring at her. Her heart was beating rapidly. However, on second thought, if the elder killed Ji, it wouldn't be considered breaking her promise. Moreover, this was an agreement between Tian Peng and Tian Peng. The corners of Ji's mouth curled up into a smile. How could he not understand what this girl was thinking? "Li Sijiao, get down here." As soon as he said that, everyone was astonished. Who was this brat? He dared to be so impudent in front of the saintess of the 10 great cultivation sects. The Evolving Divine Temple is no longer the same as before. What is the Evolving Divine Temple now? The other elders of the Evolving Temple had all lost their disciples in this trial, so they were certain that Ji was their enemy. This was especially so for the Seven Summits elder. He had personally witnessed Ji push his beloved disciple into the demonic dragon's mouth. Ji, who do you think you are? Saintess Gu is a member of the 10 great sects. Do you think you can order her around? Why don't you take a look at yourself first? Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because your master is protecting you. Ji didn't even look at the elders, but her voice grew louder. "Li Sijiao, Saintess Gu, what are you still standing there for? Get down here." Two man and the elders beside the saintess were stunned. Was Ji scared out of her wits when she saw someone standing up for her? Even Yi Chume couldn't hold it in anymore. Fan, don't be rude. Back off now. Master, don't worry. I know what to do. The elder beside the saintess was so angry that his beard was trembling. If what happened today were to spread, the Tiani society would lose face in the future. How dare you? The gray-robed elder pointed his hands downward, forming a hurricane. Anything that got close to the hurricane turned into ashes. Just as he was about to exert force with his legs, the saintess said, "Uncle Ching, let me go." What? Uncle Ching wondered if there was something wrong with his ears. The saintess waved her long sleeves, and 2 red ridges flew in front of Jiyu, shattering the stone tiles on the ground. It seemed that she wanted to show Jiyu who was in charge. She stepped on the red ridges, and all the young people present were stunned. Instead of calling her the saintess of a sect, it was more appropriate to call her a seductive demoness. Jiyu asked the saintess to get down, and the saintess really came down. It's incredible. What's the relationship between him and the saintess? If only I was the one who could order the saintess around. I'll definitely make her. You're thinking too much. The saintess is so pure. You can't tarnish her. What? You're not convinced. When the meeting is over, let's find a quiet place to fight. Okay. Li Sijiao landed in front of Jiyu, and a trace of disgust flashed in her beautiful eyes. There was also a trace of doubt, surprise, and fear. I'm here now. What do you want? Jiyu chuckled, pointed at the old man in the canopy dome, and said, "Kill him." Is that the first thing? No. Li Sijiao covered her mouth and laughed. Then why should I help you? What deal do you have with him? I'll give you the same price. Otherwise, my first request is for you to kill the man beside you just now. Li Sijiao's eyes changed, as if she was going to eat Jiyu. How dare you? Li Sijiao lost her parents when she was young, and only Uncle Ching had been taking care of her. How could she not be angry when she heard Jiyu's request? It's my business whether I dare or not. It's your business whether you do it or not. Don't forget. Shut up. I'll kill him. Li Sijiao turned around, and 2 men saw this unexpected scene. Saintess, don't forget that we have an agreement. As long as you help me today, we will be a family. Don't you like to lie? Now the enemy who killed him is right in front of you. Li Sijiao snorted. What's there to like about a dead man? After that, a red light flashed, and a head rolled on the ground. Ji was a little scared. If she hadn't been plotted against that day, she would have ended up like this. This woman's strength was too terrifying. Yi Chume smiled. I didn't expect my disciple to have such a relationship with the saintess. Good job, my disciple. Jiyu thought to herself, is this girl jealous? So he smiled. He patted Jiyu's shoulder, walked to the center of the square, and raised his hands high. Honorable Queen of Ice and Frost, your descendant has been selected. Jiyu will take over as the leader disciple of the evolving temple. Jiyu took a step forward and raised his long sword. Suddenly, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the clear sky, as if countless demon soldiers were worshipping him. The evolving temple commands thousands of sections. The leader comes to the world, and thousands of people will come. He exclaimed loudly. The wind blew, and the surrounding flowers and trees all fell as if they were worshipping him. The disciples of the evolving temple all knelt down. Li Sijiao also said, Tiani inheritance, the evolving temple, today the leader disciple will return. Her words made even the top 10 sects acknowledge Jiyu's identity. I, Master of Starfall, Yin Shanghai, congratulate the leader disciple. I, Master of Star Soul, Yu Xiao, congratulate the leader disciple. I, Master of Flying Fall, Missouri Ming, congratulate the leader disciple. The masters of the 3 empires all bowed and congratulated. The tens of thousands of elite soldiers even knelt on the ground as if they were looking at a god. I, Jiyu, the leader disciple of the evolving temple, welcome the new leader, Old Man Canopy. According to the rules of the evolving temple, anyone who took over the position of leader of the evolving temple had to abandon their name and become Old Man Canopy. Ichume had already removed the sect's holy object from 2 man's body when everyone was kneeling. She removed the mark that was originally left on it. Ha ha! Today is a joyous day for the evolving temple. I prepared a feast. Everyone enjoy. After the ceremony, Old Man Canopy brought Gu to the side hall. Disciple, what's your relationship with Li Sijiao? It doesn't matter. It's just that this disciple knows some of her unbearable scandals, so she is somewhat afraid of this disciple. Old Man Canopy's eyes twitched. Is that so? With the Tiani sect's protection, the evolving temple will definitely prosper. I'm very tired today, so I'll take my leave. Go. Anyway, I'll be taking over the position of leader for you. In a few years, it'll still be yours. After Jiyu left, Ma Feng appeared behind Old Man Canopy. Watch him. Yes. When a room was completely empty, Old Man Canopy touched the two heads on the throne. I've been in the evolving temple for decades to get to where I am today. Let me sit for 2 years, and I'll pass the position to you. The evolving temple is mine. It'll always be mine. Ji returned to the leader's disciple hall. Ma Feng stood behind her and clapped his hands. Immediately, countless fluorite stones emitted light at the same time, brightening up the originally dark hall. However, behind the fluorite stones were more than 10 ordinary people of the fire attribute. They consumed the Xian energy in their bodies as the energy for the fluorite stones to emit light. Just as the fluorites lit up, a high-pitched female voice drifted into their ears. More than 10 dancers walked in from both sides, holding red fans. They wore light muslin dresses and were dancing seductively. Ma Feng smiled and said, "Leader's disciple, these are your people. I hope you'll have a son soon." Ji nodded. Ma Feng cupped his hands and left. He waved his sleeves. The red silk in the air tied up the dancers. The curtains on the bed also slowly fell down. Be gentle. It's my turn. Sorry, leader's disciple. I'll help you rub it. It was a spring night. More than 10 women who had just lost their virginity woke up early to help Jiyu dress up. Ma Feng shouted outside the hall, "Leader's disciple. The leader said he has something to discuss with you." Jiyu nodded and stood up. The evolving temple was really welcoming. In fact, he knew that this was because a superior sect wanted to leave behind a good legacy. Most of the women here were willing. Jiyu didn't have much to say about this. Chapter 741. The Sky Dome Old Man was sitting in the main hall. He nodded at Jiyu. Then he went straight to the point. Last night, I had a discussion with the Saintess. Although the leader's disciple has reached the 6th tier of the human profound realm, according to the rules, he must go to the Tiani Palace and receive 3 years of instruction. This was a rule set by the Tiani Palace when they ruled the central region. Every 50 years, all the sects under the Tiani Palace must send their leader's disciple to the Tiani Palace to receive instruction. This way, it would be easier for them to recognize who their master was. Ji didn't refuse. As for the second matter, as everyone knows, the Tiani Palace has 3 saintesses. Saintess Gu hopes that you can support her after you enter the Tiani Palace. Ji was silent for a moment. Master, you mean to let me marry her? In this way, the Divine Evolution Temple can become the strongest sect under the Tiani Palace. Marry her? Is she willing? Even if she's not willing now, it doesn't matter. There will be a chance in the future. I understand. Then I'll prepare my luggage and return to the Tiani Palace with the Saintess. That's good. After Jiyu left, the Sky Dome Old Man instructed Ma Feng. You must keep an eye on him. If he's willing to stay in the Tiani Palace, it'll be best. But I don't want to see him again. My life was saved by the sect leader. I'll definitely fulfill the sect leader's order. Very good. You may leave. The Sky Dome Old Man looked out the door. Jiyu, oh Jiyu, you better not come back. Otherwise, don't blame me for disregarding our relationship as master and disciple. Outside the 10,000 demon, Tower Li Sijiao reached out her hand. Strong demonic aura continuously entered her body from the top of the tower. After a while, Li Sijiao's body exploded. That's enough. If you continue, you'll only explode and die, Uncle Qing said worriedly. Uncle Qing said worriedly. Li Sijiao, reluctantly, withdrew her hand. This 10,000 fiend tower is indeed a good thing. No wonder Two-Man wants to use it as an exchange with us. Seeing that Li Sijiao's demonic power had improved again, Uncle Qing smiled and said, "Initially, we wanted to help Tu Lai secure his position as the leader's disciple so that you could obtain the demonic power of the demonic beasts in the lower 3 levels. Who would have thought that you would help you become the leader's disciple?" Uncle Qing, I know, but the result is the same now. Although Yu is not easy to control, after he goes to the Qiani Palace, he will be in our territory. But Qingwan and Shui may have also chosen people from other sections. I'm afraid so. It's best if his profound strength is completely crippled. Uncle Qing was a little curious. Do you know him? Why did she hate him so much? If that's the case, why don't I just kill him? No, Uncle Qing, at this moment, Yu came from not far away. Hey, are you talking bad about me? Li Sijiao glanced at Yu, gritted her teeth, and whispered, "Shameless boy," again. After snorting, she turned around and wanted to leave. Yu grabbed her. Uncle Qing was about to speak, but Li Sijiao beat him to it and said, "Uncle Qing, you go back first. I'll be fine." Uncle Qing glared at Yu fiercely. "Boy, if you dare to do anything, don't blame me for being merciless with my sword." After saying that, he left. As soon as Uncle Qing left, Yu held Li Sijiao's chin with one hand and pulled her into his arms with the other. "Girl, remember this. It was you who begged me to let you live. I don't care who you are. Tell your dog to be polite to me when he sees me in the future." Li Sijiao felt Yu's shameless action. "I just promised to do 3 things for you. I'm not your slave. Now you should know the difference between us. Aren't you my slave? Well, I'll let you go today. Tell me, why do you want me to go to the Qiani Palace?" Li Sijiao quickly got away from Yu and rubbed her little hands. As you all know, our Qiani Palace has a Grand Master in the life and death realm. Although he failed to break through, he has already sealed his precious weapon in the secret realm. Recently, there are signs that the secret realm will reopen. Our Qiani Palace plans to open the secret realm for those who pass the selection. Aren't you afraid that the precious weapon will fall into the hands of others? After it's done, the subordinate sex will get a certain reward, but they won't be able to enter. Secondly, it can show the power of our Qiani Palace. Haha, you're just the weakest among the top 10 sections. How dare you talk about your power? How ridiculous. Today, you owe me another thing. I'll come back to take it some other day. Seeing Yu swagger away, Li Sijiao asked curiously, "When did I owe you another thing?" Yu turned around and smiled. "Today, I plan to take your virginity outside the 10,000 Demon Tower. Don't you think you owe me another thing? You're shameless." Li Sijiao suddenly realized that she could have kept those words from Yu. Why was she so obedient? This shameless thief. Li Sijiao wished that Yu would be caught and killed by the righteous faction in the next second. Based on Li Sijiao's words, Yu concealed a portion of the information and told the Queen of Frost the rest. "Young friend Ji, we planned to make a move when you could control the protective formation. We didn't expect that old man Tian Peng was greedy for the throne and gave you to the Qiani Palace. How about this? You sneak into the Qiani Palace first and snatch the secret treasure. Perhaps the mystery of my resurrection will be there. Don't worry, Chue. I will definitely do what I promised you back then." After saying that, the remnant's soul actually blushed. The Qiani Palace was located on a huge mountain range in the northernmost part of the central region. The entire mountain range was like a huge demon king that opened its hands and hugged the entire central region. 7 demonic beasts flapped their wings. Ji stood on a huge bone bird. 5 or 6 light circles appeared in the air. 2 meatballs flew in front of everyone. Those who enter the Qiani Palace first must drip their blood as proof. Ji swung her hand, and a drop of blood flew out, dripping on the invisible protective formation. With a flash of golden light, a huge bridge appeared from the ground. Flowers were everywhere on both sides of the bridge, and birds chirped continuously in the sky. Such a paradise. as expected, the territory of the 10 great sects of the sacred sect. A fat man with a big waist couldn't help but be shocked when he saw this scene. He immediately slapped the back of his head. Idiot! Next time you speak nonsense, I will slap you to death. Ji felt that this woman was interesting, so she asked, I am Ji from the Evolving Temple. May I know your name? Li Sijiao pulled Ji. She is Yin Yuro, one of the 3 saintesses of the Bloodsea Hall. She is indeed a peerless beauty. Hearing Jiu's praise, Yin Yuro smiled. This must be the saintess that Sijiao recruited from the Evolving Temple. You are indeed a handsome little brother, and your body is also full of yang energy. Do you want to play with me? While speaking, Yin Yuro used a movement technique that couldn't be seen by others and appeared in front of Jiu. Her fingertips gradually moved downwards. Jiu grabbed her hand. If you want to play, why don't we change the time? Oh, the saintess of a second-rate sect has already stepped into the 6th level of the human profound realm. Little brother, you are very interesting. Whenever you miss me, remember to knock on my door. Jiu smiled, but no one saw that a drop of sweat was slowly falling from his forehead. Yin Yuro's charm technique was 100 times better than Li Sijiao's. He was almost careless. Only a woman with a face as cold as ice was left behind, standing behind everyone like a snowy mountain. However, there were actually 5 or 6 people following behind her. Seeing that Jiu was able to resist Yin Yuro's charm technique, they couldn't help but take a few more glances at Jiu. Yo, isn't this our saintess Qing Wan? Where did you go to hook up with so many young men? Qing Wan looked at Yin Yuro with disdain. The eyes of the few young men behind her instantly turned red, and the spiritual energy in their bodies started to expand uncontrollably. Insulting our saintess, kill her! Kill her! The few young men rushed towards Yin Yuro at the same time. Jiu's figure moved, and a surge of majestic spiritual energy instantly suppressed the few of them. 7th level of the human profound realm? You do have some ability. Qing Wan praised, but her beautiful eyes were already staring at Jiu's eyes. F*CK. Every single demoness is using charm techniques on me. Do they really think that I'm that easy to control? Jiu's heart burned with anger, and she looked back without fear. Tricked! Tricked! Li Sijiao and Yin Yuro both thought at the same time. Li Sijiao was more anxious. Jiu was the saintess that she had chosen. If she was controlled by Qing Wan, how could she go out and meet people in the future? How could a human profound realm's spiritual energy compare to an earth profound realm's? The answer was self-evident. The wood profound energy in Jiu's body suddenly burst out. A cool breeze swept past everyone's face. On the surface, it seemed to be silent, but only Jiu and Qing Wan knew how shocking it was. Qing Wan felt that her soul was about to be destroyed, and her mind was blank. Qing Wan vomited blood and half knelt on the ground. Her heart was incomparably shocked. How is this possible? He's just a little heart-stirring stage cultivator. How could he injure my soul in an instant? What kind of evil technique is this? A trace of surprise flashed across Li Sijiao and Yin Yuro's eyes. How did this brat defeat Qing Wan? The two of them didn't dare to directly clash with Qing Wan's soul. I wonder if this brat can enter Saintess Qing's eyes? Qing Wan looked at Jiu's arrogant face and gritted her teeth. She took half a step forward, and the power of an earth profound realm expert erupted from her body. Yin Yuro and Li Sijiao were both startled. In the blink of an eye, she appeared in front of Jiu. Qing Wan, are you going to kill my sect's holy son in broad daylight? Beads of sweat began to appear on a magic tool in Gu Jialuo's hand. She didn't know if she should protect Jiu for the sake of her face. Jiu's arrogant appearance made her want to teach him a lesson. However, if she could teach him a lesson, it didn't mean that others could. Chapter 742. Li Sijiao's expression clearly showed that she was biased towards Jiu. However, Jiu pulled her behind her. After seeing this scene, Qing Wan stepped forward with her sword on her back. Jiu smiled. At this moment, several small flags flew out quickly and landed on the ground. Qing Wan and the others entered the formation. This is an 8th grade formation. It's really powerful. The few saints gasped and looked at each other at this moment. He warned Jiyu with words of warning. Quickly release the saintess. There was only a slight smile on Jiyu's face. With a wave of his hand, the array suddenly lit up. At this moment, countless long arrows flew towards her. Qing Wan was indeed one of the 3 saintesses of the sect. She raised her hand, and a huge shield appeared in front of Jiyu. At this moment, those arrows fell to the ground, accompanied by tinkling sounds. This was accompanied by a deep voice. Suddenly, the formation in front of her broke. Jiyu dodged to the side and dodged all the arrows. The 3 saintesses fixed their eyes on Jiyu at the same time. As the golden path lit up, a row of disciples in robes walked out. They looked at each other and gradually walked towards Jiyu. He said calmly, "All right, stop fooling around. This is not a place where you can kill." After saying this, they stretched out their hands and welcomed Jiyu into the Tianyi sect. As the last of the top 10 sects in the 5 fields, the Tianyi sect was extremely powerful. It was also known as one of the holy palaces. They looked at each other and gradually walked towards Jiyu. They looked at each other and said calmly, "Greetings, Sacred Master." They said solemnly to the statues next to them. Jiyu just glanced at those statues. He didn't pay any attention to it and just walked in. The rest of the people quickly gathered and walked into the room. Jiyu exchanged glances with them. A building appeared in front of everyone. On top of the building, there was a huge horizontal board with the words Book Collection Pavilion written on it. If one wanted to enter, they would have to obtain a ranking in a certain place before they could enter. In the end, he would become an expert. They looked at each other, and Li Sijiao took a step forward. Jiyu said indifferently, "What do you plan to do? If you help me seize the position of the head disciple, I can help you enter the secret realm. At that time, it might be the key for you to break through to the earth profound realm." After saying this, they looked at each other. Jiyu said indifferently, "Humph, of course it's good." Suddenly, a clap of thunder resounded in the sky. Jiyu suddenly raised her head and looked at the sky, only to see a meteor falling quickly. Li Sijiao took Jiyu to a building and pointed in another direction. "This is where you will live. Go in. I believe your friends are waiting for you." The selection criteria of the Tianyi Palace was to select the most outstanding people from the major sects and then cultivate them here. Naturally, they would also be sent back, but this way they could show their strength. Jiyu entered the big building. Suddenly, a few men raised their heads and set their eyes on Jiyu. A smile appeared on their faces. Under the signal of a young master, one of the strong men walked in front of Jiyu with a smile on his face. He took a few steps forward and stood in front of Jiyu. He said indifferently, "Boy, you just came in. Maybe there are some rules you don't know. Here, you have to hand over your things." "What things?" A trace of doubt appeared in his heart, and he asked, "Crossbreed your things." "I won't say it again." After saying this, he turned his head and took 2 steps forward, locking his eyes on Jiyu. At this moment, they directly approached Jiyu. He threw a heavy punch in Jiyu's direction. Jiyu raised his hand and caught his fist. He twisted it behind his opponent, and with a scream, a cracking sound came from Jiyu's body. He suddenly turned around and kicked Jiyu. Jiyu took a step back and punched him heavily. Accompanied by a scream, Jiyu disappeared. Jiyu suddenly disappeared from where he was standing. A moment later, he appeared behind Yi Futian and struck him on the back of his head. Yi Futian felt a sharp pain in the back of his head. He widened his eyes and took 2 steps forward. In an instant, he disappeared from his original spot. A moment later, he appeared in front of Jiyu and hit Jiyu's back heavily. At this moment, the dark force in Jiyu's hand suddenly exploded and gathered. Dark skill, fierce thunder fist. After shouting this sentence, a bolt of lightning struck down. At this moment, the surrounding lightning quickly gathered in Jiyu's fist. Jiyu slammed the ground with a heavy punch. At this moment, countless bolts of lightning flew in all directions. Those bolts of lightning were like poisonous snakes twining around the man's body. However, he didn't seem to be affected at all. Those bolts of lightning covered his entire body. The man opened his eyes and pounced in Ji-Yu's direction. Ji-Yu kicked him, and he was sent flying, crashing into the wall behind him. When he fell to the ground, 2 streams of blood came out from the corners of his mouth. He slammed heavily on the ground. His arms instantly became as thick as bricks. At this moment, countless diamond shards flew in Ji-Yu's direction. Ji-Yu raised her hands, and a thick earthen wall appeared in front of her. Those diamond shards stabbed into the thick wall. Ji-Yu reached out and hit the wall heavily. Those diamond shards wrapped up at this moment, and countless grains of sand fell on his body. The man suddenly roared, "Boy, you have some skills, but so what? In my eyes, you're courting death now." After shouting these words, he quickly ran forward. When Ji-Yu saw this, she suddenly turned around and raised her hands. She grabbed the man in front of her and slammed him to the side. At this moment, the man suddenly fell to the ground. She kept hitting the man's body. At this moment, countless grains of sand quickly gathered together. As Ji-Yu twisted her body, it was as if countless pressures were squeezing his body. Only then did Ji-Yu release her grip. At this moment, the sand slowly flowed in all directions. At this moment, the man's face was bleeding. He opened his eyes and flew toward Ji-Yu. He ran 2 steps on the ground and turned into 2 bolts of lightning. Then, he flew forward and flew toward Ji-Yu. Right at this moment, Ji-Yu vanished on the spot. After a moment, he suddenly turned his head. After she landed on the ground, he waved his hands. At this moment, the people around him quickly ran forward. They looked at each other and quickly flew toward Ji-Yu. Ji suddenly kicked out and seriously stepped on his body. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Ji-Yu said indifferently, "Now, you don't need me to hand over anything, right?" After hearing his words, the people around him applauded. Ji-Yu couldn't help but frown at their behavior of not coming forward to save their teammate. He said indifferently, "What are you going to do?" After hearing Ji-Yu's words, they looked at each other and disappeared in a flash. After a moment, they appeared in front of Ji-Yu. He abruptly turned around and swung a heavy punch down. At that moment, Ji-Yu suddenly turned to the side, and his fist landed on the ground beside him. After being knocked down by the fist, they looked at each other, and Ji-Yu suddenly disappeared from where he was. A moment later, he appeared in front of him. She directly raised her hands and held his neck. He said indifferently, "Haha, 5th level of the human profound realm? No, you're in the 6th level." After saying this, he abruptly turned around, and the profound energy in his hand dropped rapidly. After a loud bang, he disappeared on the spot. A ball of fire burned and fell on his body. At this moment, another ball of fire burned fiercely at this moment, and after a loud bang, a loud sound was heard. The 2 of them quickly flew backward. At this moment, all the people in the room came forward and fixed their eyes on Ji-Yu. One of them said, "Boy, you should know whose territory this is in the Tianyi Palace." After shouting this, several people around him quickly came forward. In a flash, they flew forward and surrounded Ji-Yu. Ji-Yu abruptly pulled himself away. Countless balls of intense light completely sealed him off. The use of dark force had reached such a high level. Chapter 743. Ji-Yu said calmly, "Why do you still want to fight with me?" After hearing this, the people around him quickly surrounded Ji-Yu. In the next moment, Ji-Yu suddenly turned around, and the people in front of him suddenly looked in his direction. In an instant, they flew in front of Ji-Yu. He suddenly pulled out his sword and swung it in the direction of Ji-Yu. Then, he suddenly disappeared on the spot. Ji-Yu's long sword flew in front of him. The giant Kuan Peng sword in the air split into countless long swords. At this moment, he swung his hand heavily. The giant Kuan Peng sword fell rapidly at this moment. Boom! Boom! If it wasn't for the fact that this house was made of special materials, everything around it would have collapsed. After seeing this scene, Ji-Yu stood up and said calmly, "Mystic skill flying sand and stones." Countless stones quickly gathered together and fell to the ground. At this moment, those stones surrounded him. At this moment, a loud boom was heard. They were completely surrounded. At this moment, they surrounded Gu completely. After seeing this scene, Gu suddenly disappeared on the spot. At this moment, the people around him gradually walked towards Gu. After seeing this scene, they exchanged glances. At this moment, countless boulders collided with their bodies, accompanied by loud, rumbling sounds. The remaining people looked at each other. They took 2 steps back. In the next second, Gu suddenly swung his giant Kuan Pung sword. In the next moment, the giant sword suddenly swung down. After the collision, he looked to the side. At this moment, the remaining people surrounded Gu. Gu swung the giant Kuan Pung sword in his hand and suddenly swung it down. In the next moment, the waves on the giant sword burst out in all directions. At this moment, the power of water also burst out. They stood up and suddenly looked in the direction of Gu. At this moment, he said calmly, "How is it possible? How can a person in the 6th tier of the human profound realm have such strength?" After saying this, they looked at each other. Gu took 2 steps forward and said calmly, "Then hand over the things you want." After the fight, a trace of fear appeared in their hearts after seeing Gu. They immediately took out a pill from their arms and put it on the table. He even had a faint smile on his face. Gu turned around and walked out of the door. After seeing this scene, he sucked in a breath of cold air and suddenly disappeared on the spot. Clang, clang, clang. Everyone walked out of the door. He looked up and saw several people gathering in front of him. Gu said calmly, "What's going on?" After hearing this, they quickly gathered together and walked to Gu. They looked at each other. "The protector is summoning us." They walked to the center of the square and raised their heads. The protector of the Tianyi school said faintly, "From the moment you stepped into this great sect, you must know that you are here to let the people of the 5 major domains know who is the leader of the sections. I want you to do something." They looked at each other and said calmly, "What is it?" After hearing this, they glanced at each other. At this moment, the protector slowly opened his mouth and said, "I need you to eradicate some sections." Gu walked to the other side and slowly walked out. At this moment, he said, "Why do you want us to carry out such a mission?" The people next to him shrugged their shoulders. "How would I know? And I don't think this is a good idea." After saying this, a bolt of lightning came from the sky. At this moment, the people next to Gu followed him out of the hall. However, Gu soon understood why they were sent to carry out such a mission. On the surface, they violated the rules of the 10,000 Arts Immortal Alliance by forging treasures with human souls, but in fact, their sect had a long river of spirit stones. The 8 disciples landed on the ground, followed by a person called the Protector. He smiled faintly. "Don't worry, I will definitely look after you." After saying this, the people next to him gradually walked forward. They looked at each other. In front of the sect, the people standing there slowly walked forward. They raised their hands and stopped Gu in front of them. After hearing this, the people next to him gradually walked forward. After seeing Gu, he flew up and arrived in front of Gu in the blink of an eye. "Stop! Is the Shadow Peak sect a place you can casually barge in?" When they heard this, they looked at each other. In the blink of an eye, the 2 disciples beside Gu took a step forward. From their storage rings, they took out treasures and attacked the people in front of them. A trace of vigilance appeared in the eyes of the people from the Shadow Peak sect. They suddenly turned their heads and took out treasures from their arms. The 2 treasures collided with each other heavily. With a loud bang, he took a step back and fixed his eyes on the person in front of him. With a trace of unwillingness in his mouth, he asked, "Who are you?" After hearing this, Gu suddenly disappeared. After a while, she appeared behind one of the disciples of the Shadow Peak sect. She took out her treasures and chopped down heavily. Accompanied by a scream, the person in front of her instantly fell into a pool of blood. When the disciples of the Shadow Peak sect heard the sound, 7 or 8 people came out from inside. They were only at the 3rd layer of the human profound realm. For the disciples of the Tianyi sect, they were nothing. Their figures flickered as they disappeared from where they stood. After a while, a few people walked forward. Gu took out her treasures. In an instant, they all flew forward and chopped down the treasures. Jiyu turned around and disappeared. She took 2 steps to the side. He picked up the treasure tool beside him and slashed down with his sword. After slashing down with his sword, he suddenly turned around and looked behind him. Preposterous! How dare you barge into our sect without permission? An incomparably dignified voice came from the direction of the Shadow Peak sect. In an instant, a few people descended from the sky. They took out their treasures and locked their eyes on Jiyu and the others. In an instant, they rushed in the direction of Jiyu. Jiyu suddenly turned around and chopped down with the treasures in her hand. A loud bang was heard. At this moment, the profound energy impacted everything in the surroundings. Several people fell into a pool of blood, but the person who said those words was still standing on the mountain gate. He looked forward and said indifferently, "You dare to kill my Shadow Peak sex people? You're courting death." After shouting this sentence, the people beside him jumped to the ground. They suddenly opened their eyes and picked up the treasures beside them. They rushed in the direction of Jiyu. Jiyu picked up the Kuin Peng giant sword and chopped off the long legs of several people. After seeing this scene, they sucked in a breath of cold air. Jiyu took a few steps forward and said indifferently, "We're here under orders." She swung her sword down and a huge power of thunder and lightning suddenly fell. A loud bang was heard in the surroundings. Boom! After a loud boom, the surrounding ground began to explode. The old man's figure flashed and walked to a place not far away. He slapped the ground heavily. 2 profound energies collided violently at this moment. Another loud explosion was heard, and the few people behind him quickly took a step back. At the same time, they raised their heads and looked forward. Jiyu said indifferently, "Profound skill, raging flames burn the city." At this moment, the Kuin Peng giant sword emitted flames. Countless flames flew out from the sword tip and bombarded the ground at this moment. The flames gathered at this moment and fell in front of Jiyu. Jiyu suddenly raised his hand. He reached out and blocked, swallowing the flames. He gradually stood up and turned around. He said indifferently, "Tianyi sect's disciples are really good." Jiyu suddenly turned around. The Kuin Peng giant sword chopped down at his head. It hit his neck. After being cut, he suddenly turned around and looked in the direction of the attack. After seeing this scene, the old man stretched out his hand. In an instant, a huge palm formed in the sky. In the next moment, the huge palm slapped down at this moment. Jiyu raised the treasured weapon in his hand and slammed it forward. At this moment, the 2 treasured weapons collided with a loud bang. They flew out and slid on the ground. Taking advantage of this opportunity, several people at the side suddenly rushed forward and stabbed the treasured weapon. Chapter 744. The old man looked at Jiyu in horror. His Kuin Peng giant sword suddenly flew out. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of swords fell from the sky. The strength of the 6th tier of the human profound realm directly broke through the sky. After falling to the ground, they were wrapped up by the formation formed by the giant swords. Between the swords, powerful thunder and lightning burst out. Countless balls of fire appeared on the swords. The fire suddenly burst out. The thunder and lightning were combined with the flames. The old man was forced to a dead end. He roared helplessly at the sky. Who would have thought that the heavens would want to force my shadow sect to its death? The 2 of them looked at each other. Jiyu took 2 steps forward and raised her hand slightly. After a scream, he fell into a pool of blood. After the elder harvested the old man's head, Jiyu followed the 7 disciples into the main hall. More than 100 servants knelt on the ground. They kept kowtowing and begging, "Please don't kill us." Hearing the miserable cries of these servants, they couldn't bear to kill them. Jiyu took 2 steps forward. The elder closed his eyes and didn't say anything else. He opened his mouth and asked, "Where's the secret room?" The servants kept kowtowing to the ground. One of them cried and said, "I really don't know." Before he could kowtow a few more times, a man suddenly came forward and grabbed his head. "If you don't tell us, don't blame us for being rude." After saying this, he stabbed the long sword into the servant's chest. After spitting out the blood, he closed his eyes. Ji took a deep breath. She didn't expect that the Tiani sect would treat others as human beings. The rest of the servants continued to kowtow after they heard the words. Ji didn't save these people because she knew that even if she did, she might not be able to save them. It would only leave behind a bigger problem. He said faintly, "If you don't speak, this will be your fate." The rest of the people sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at each other. Ji took a step forward and raised her hand. At this moment, Xian energy gathered. At this moment, the profound energy gathered in Jiyu's hand. A wisp of profound energy slowly entered the other party's head. The servant cried out in pain. Only then did Jiyu let go of his hand. He said faintly, "I don't think he knows." Only then did the protector close his eyes, and his spiritual power spread throughout the entire hall. According to the strength of the Tiani Palace, there was no need for them to destroy an entire race for a long river of spiritual stones. There must be something fishy about this. Jiyu actually had some doubts in her heart, so she decided to investigate further. The protector suddenly snorted coldly. "Deal with these people. I have found them." Several disciples cupped their hands and said yes, then walked into the center of the hall. In front of the stone statue of the Shadow Sect's leader, he raised his hand and was about to break the stone statue. Suddenly, the sound of the earth shaking and mountains shaking was heard. Only then did 3 figures appear on ground. They looked at each other and took 2 steps forward. Jiyu said faintly, "Who are you waiting for?" "It's the 3 black-clothed men." Jiyu suddenly thought of the leader of the black-clothed men, then slowly said, "Kill them." After roaring these words, the people around her jumped down one after another. The 2 men in black suddenly emitted a purple light. In an instant, the purple light covered their entire bodies. What? They are actually experts of the 8th tier of the human profound realm? They sucked in a breath of cold air. An iron fan suddenly appeared in one of their hands. There were strange patterns on the iron fan. He glared at the front. Both of his hands waved the fan. Suddenly, a gust of evil wind blew. At this moment, countless iron shards were blown into the air, directly blowing towards the bodies of the disciples. They quickly jumped out and stood in front of Jiyu. A powerful energy suddenly enveloped both of them. He took a deep breath and raised his hand. At this moment, a few tiny leaves flew over at high speed. He locked his gaze on Jiyu. As his body spun, specks of starlight fell to the ground. A cracking sound was heard from the huge rock not far in front of him. At this moment, the rock started to shatter. At this moment, the gang cheese on the bodies of several disciples were also broken. Although they were also disciples of the 5th tier of the human profound realm, there was a gap of 3 tiers between them. Along with the gang chi, a loud cracking sound was heard. The profound force turned into specks of starlight. They scattered in all directions. Jiyu took a step forward, and several people beside her flew up at the same time. They slowly took 2 steps forward. In an instant, they disappeared on the spot. After a while, he appeared on the spot. He flew into the air, and the precious weapon in his hand suddenly fell down. The long sword cut through the sky. It fell to the ground. A few disciples had their bodies pierced through by the iron shards, and blood dripped down from them. They sucked in a breath of cold air. Jiyu took 2 steps forward and looked at their bodies. At this moment, 2 balls of profound energy were gathered in Jiyu's hands. Ding! The host used raging fire to burn the city. The experience gained is 1 times 999. The flames broke away from his hands. They turned into 2 green birds, flew up in the air, and let out a bird cry. Then they spread the wings on their back. Humph! Insignificant skill. He coldly snorted and let out a disdainful smile. At the same time, the 2 balls of fire also shot out. They fell to the ground. In an instant, the flames burned in all directions and gradually wrapped the surrounding people. After being engulfed by the flames, they let out a scream. Jiyu stood up abruptly. Those 2 black-clothed men were like ghosts, disappearing from their original positions. However, Ji-Yu's eyes were fixed on the guys who had not moved from the beginning to the end. Suddenly, two people flew out and took out treasures from their sleeves. Then, they flew out and took out treasures from their sleeves. One was an iron fan, and the other was a long spear. The two of them attacked at the same time, and suddenly fell in the direction of Ji-Yu. After seeing this scene, he turned around abruptly, and a precious weapon flew out in an instant. He held the precious weapon in his hand, and suddenly shot it at Ji-Yu. Suddenly, the protector moved. He sensed that the three men in black in front of him were not from the Shadow Sect, and the profound skill he sensed from them was not a profound skill that could be used by ordinary people. The thread of profound force in his hand fell behind Ji-Yu, and he suddenly pulled out his hand. The black-clothed man sneered as he pulled the young man in front of him. Like ghosts, the two men in black turned around and headed in the direction of Ji-Yu. The corners of his mouth revealed a trace of a smile. He dropped all the profound force threads in front of him on the ground, and he suddenly pulled his hand. The protector was not in a hurry, and he stepped on the ground. A strong burst of profound force spread out in all directions from his body. At this moment, the few people in the surroundings flew out. After seeing this scene, he took a deep breath. He said indifferently, "Profound skill, 10,000 laws of heavenly thunder." Countless lightning balls flew down from the sky and shot out in all directions. After seeing this, the two men in black fled in another direction. He turned around abruptly. He had originally thought that no matter how powerful Ji-Yu was, he would not be able to escape. There was no way that she could follow him. The two men in black had just taken a step forward, but they did not expect that the lightning balls would hit the ground. The ball of lightning collided with the opponent's body. The men in black let out a scream. They fell to the ground. The two men in black fell to the ground. There was a charred smell coming from their left. At this moment, the man in black, who had been standing still, slowly opened his eyes. He snorted coldly and stepped on the ground. The precious weapon that had been stuck in the ground suddenly flew out. He gently touched the sword hilt, and the long sword flew out at a high speed. Along with the long sword, it flew out. The protector stepped on the ground and flew backward. The long sword landed in front of him, and the protector kept flying backward. After a moment, he turned around and looked in front of Ji-Yu. He said indifferently, "Kill." After roaring these words, the protector suddenly waved his hands. The flames in his hands covered the entire sky at this moment, and the flames gradually spread downwards. He turned around and said indifferently, "You are definitely not from the Shadow Sect." After these words were spoken, Yi Zichen nodded. A ball of fire appeared in the hands of the leader of the men in black. "Go to hell, old thing." After shouting these words, he jumped up quickly and hammered the ground heavily with his hands, accompanied by a loud bang. With a boom, the explosive force spread in all directions. Ji-Yu looked at the leader of the men in black. The protector was obviously no match for the leader of the men in black, but he had also consumed a lot of his strength. After thinking of this, Ji-Yu said indifferently, "Let me do it." After saying this, Ji-Yu instantly waved the huge sword of the Kuan Pong. A bolt of lightning struck in the direction of the leader of the men in black. The leader of the men in black did not dare to face the lightning. He raised his hands and poured all his strength into his palms. The two dark forces collided. The power of the lightning spread in all directions in an instant. The power of the lightning spread in all directions like thunder snakes. Chapter 745. Mystical Technique, Raging Inferno. Ding. Host has used Raging Inferno. You have gained 1 by a 999 experience points. The Raging Inferno instantly shot towards the leader of the men in black. The man in black placed one hand on his back, and a long curved sword that was as long as a poisonous snake appeared in his hand. He swung the sword down heavily. In an instant, the Raging Inferno was directly parted by the long sword. Ji-Yu and the leader of the men in black looked at each other. He said indifferently, "Kid, I advise you not to meddle in other people's business." Wait, I think I know you. I know you too. You're that person from last time. After saying this, the two of them flew up at the same time and arrived in front of each other in an instant. At the same time, they swung their swords. The weapons collided in the air and emitted sparks in the air. The two of them looked at each other and stood up. Jiyu's figure flashed and disappeared in front of the other party in an instant. He transformed into 7 or 8 figures. The Kuan Peng giant sword was like a giant axe that directly chopped down. After the collision, the two of them flew out separately. The man in black looked at Jiyu. Jiyu turned around. He held the Kuan Peng giant sword in his hand and swung it down again. At this moment, countless rays of starlight danced in the sky. Jiyu flew up with the Kuan Peng giant sword and rushed in front of the other party. He slashed down heavily with the sword. Boom! Another loud sound was heard. He flew backwards in an instant. The leader of the men in black raised his head and looked over. After seeing this scene, they turned around abruptly. The leader of the men in black was extremely shocked. They never expected that Jiyu actually had such strength. In an instant, they flew forward and landed in the direction of Jiyu. The man in black landed on the ground and looked at Jiyu. Jiyu turned around and took 2 steps forward. The power of thunder and lightning instantly covered the power of the Kuan Peng sword, and he swung it down heavily. Those lightning bolts instantly collided with the ground and gradually flew away from the ground. It wandered around the other party's body. He let out a violent scream, and they instantly fell to the ground. After seeing this, Jiyu turned around and swung her sword again. After the lightning dissipated, they flew down. After landing on the ground a few times, they jumped onto the roof and gradually walked a few steps in another direction. So fast, the leader of the black-clothed men couldn't help but say. The remaining black-clothed men held their wounds and said calmly, "Let's go, leader. The Tiani sect is the #1 sect in the world. It won't be good when their reinforcements arrive." After hearing this sentence, the leader of the black-clothed men thought for a moment and instantly disappeared. He flew up and landed on the ground. At this moment, the black-clothed men raised their heads and slowly walked forward. Jiyu said calmly, "Kill." They landed on the ground, looked up, and picked up their magical items. Then, they flew up into the air and charged forward with killing intent. A thick black smoke began to flutter in the air. At this moment, a thick fog covered the sky. He raised his head. The elder stroked his beard. "It seems that they have the same purpose as us." They stood up. Jiyu said calmly, "Let's go and take a look and we'll know." After saying this, they stood up and gathered in front of the catacombs. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew in, and the surrounding candlelight instantly lit up. They looked around vigilantly, picked up their precious weapons, and looked around vigilantly. A clap of thunder sounded in the sky. In the underground passage, there seemed to be countless ghosts roaring. After they passed through the passage, they raised their heads and looked ahead. They only saw a long iron bridge appear in front of them. The remaining people walked in the direction of the iron bridge. Just as they walked to the iron bridge, countless iron men suddenly jumped down from who knows where. They half knelt on the iron bridge and set their eyes on Jiyu. At this moment, those iron men stood up and charged in the direction of the people of the Tiani sect with their heavy bodies. Jiyu said calmly, "I didn't expect that they would be unaware of the mechanism here." Those iron men emitted the power of the 7th layer of the human profound realm. They raised their hands and heavily smashed their fists onto the ground. Hong, that burst of Xian energy at this moment gradually turned into a ball of light and flew forward. Jiyu swung his fist forward and charged forward. The two powers collided. They spread out in all directions. They set their eyes on Jiyu. Jiyu picked up the precious weapon beside her and directly flew forward. The huge sword of the Kuan Peng in her hand directly chopped down on one of the Iron Men. The Iron Man let out a wail. With a series of crackling sounds, the surrounding Iron Men suddenly exploded. At this moment, the remaining people stood up and locked their eyes on Jiyu. They instantly flew up. At this moment, the Iron Men stood up and set their eyes on Jiyu. Jiyu said calmly, "Everyone, set up the formation. How could the disciples of the Tianyi sect not recognize the formation? They all walked forward and directly stepped on the ground. At this moment, they gradually stood up and set their eyes on Ji. At this moment, the Iron Men who were sitting on the ground stepped forward. Ji kicked one of the Iron Men. The remaining disciples also stepped forward one after another. A ball of dark power appeared around them. At the next moment, the surrounding dark light waves shook and moved forward. Boom! With another loud sound, they were sent flying backward. Ji took 2 steps forward. She looked at the people in front of her and quickly ran out on the bridge. After crossing the long bridge in front of them, they directly went into the underground passage and appeared in front of the crowd. Suddenly, the palace hall began to tremble violently. There seemed to be some kind of mission inside. They exhaled a breath of cold air. A skeleton in the formation shook. At this moment, the skeleton stood up. Pulling out a walking stick, it quickly stepped forward and ran toward Ji. In the blink of an eye, it was in front of Ji. Ji quickly dodged to the side. After dodging that attack, they set their eyes on Ji. Ji said calmly, "Be careful. That skeleton is not simple. It actually has such a strong dark power." The dark power seemed to cover the skeleton. Logically speaking, without a physical body, there would be no dark power in the skeleton. The skeleton stretched out its hands, aimed at Ji, and waved them heavily. The bone spurs on its body suddenly shot up and fell to the ground like heavy rain. Ji's astral energy suddenly descended. Those bone spikes dripped onto the body of the astral energy. In an instant, they struck the body of the astral energy. The skeleton seemed to be very angry that its bone spurs could not kill the young man in front of it. They raised their heads and set their eyes on Ji. The skeleton disappeared on the spot in an instant. After a while, it came in front of Ji. The dark power all over its body vibrated, and the people in front of it were sent flying. They fell to the ground and hit the ground heavily. They rose to their feet. They set their eyes on Ji. The rest of them set their eyes on Ji. The rest of them instantly flew forward, took out their precious weapons, and charged toward Ji. Ji blocked the precious weapons in front of her with the Kuan Peng giant sword. The skeleton suddenly retreated. The remaining 2 people flew forward and landed in front of Ji. The disciples of the Tianyi sect held their precious weapons and stood in front of Ji to protect her. "We should be the ones helping you." After saying this, they waved the swords in their hands and stood in front of Ji to protect her. They stepped on the 7 stars formation. A huge pentagram appeared on the ground. The skeleton entered the pentagram, and it seemed to have a strong melting power. At this moment, the bones in his body were swallowed up bit by bit. Ji said calmly, "Today, I'll let you be truly liberated." After Ji finished speaking, she picked up the precious weapon in front of her and flew up into the sky. She turned her head and fell from the sky. The Kuan Peng giant sword pierced into the skeleton's skull. In an instant, the skeleton's bones shattered. They flew out in an instant. They fixed their eyes on Ji. He said calmly, "What powerful strength! Roar!" After the skeleton let out a wail, it turned into ashes. At this moment, the rest of the people walked out in all directions. The rest of the people gradually surrounded them. They fixed their eyes on Ji. Ji said calmly, "Let's go down." After saying this, they walked into the hall. He only saw a red book lying quietly in the center of the hall. They wanted to put their hands on the red book, but the hands of the person who just put his hand on it suddenly turned black, and he screamed in pain. The sound of thunder echoed in all directions. Ji said calmly, "Be careful." As soon as she finished speaking, the man let out a scream. His body went soft, and he fell to the ground. Ji sighed. It seemed that she had come too late. Chapter 746. A stream of thunder chi slowly flowed from Ji's palm. It flowed to his palm. He put his hand on the thunder chi. At this moment, the power of thunder and lightning suddenly descended. A loud rumbling sound was heard. Ji jumped up, flashed, disappeared on the spot. The thunder chi slithered out of the red book and kept chasing after Ji-Yu. Ji-Yu walked to the sides, and the thunder chi fell in front of Ji-Yu at this moment. Ji-Yu held the power in his hands. He also gathered a powerful Qian energy and covered both of his palms. He reached out and grabbed the two lightning snakes in his hand. Then, he pulled them with force. They were torn apart. After Ji-Yu landed on the ground, he stepped forward and took the red book with the protection of his gang chi. He withdrew his hand. He put the book on the table. They took a closer look and found that there was not a single word on the book. At this moment, they took a deep breath. They looked at each other. Ji-Yu walked out in another direction. This red book might be what the group of men in black wanted to get. They looked at each other and stood up. Ji-Yu put the book into the storage ring. The elder touched his wand. "Did you find the thing?" Ji-Yu sighed and shook his head. There was a trace of doubt in his eyes. Could it be that they really couldn't find it? He immediately guessed in his heart, but the power of guessing also made him nervous. Ji-Yu followed the elder back to the Tianyi Palace. Ji-Yu and the others were indeed the first to come back from the experience. Li Sijiao felt a little proud. "Who asked you to play tricks behind my back all day long?" The Saintess of Cyan Phoenix didn't expect that Ji-Yu could be the first to come back. With a cold snort, a few people appeared on the ground with a flash of silver light. They looked in the direction of Ji-Yu and said indifferently, "Why did you come back so slowly?" The two of them looked at each other. After seeing this scene, Ji-Yu snorted coldly. The saints were frightened and didn't know what to say. They could only lower their heads. At this moment, the person beside them slowly took a step forward. He then said plainly, "Saint Ji-Yu was able to return so quickly. I'm sure you still have a powerful force in your hands. We can exchange blows." As soon as his voice fell, the profound energy in his body abruptly moved from his dantian to Ji-Yu's direction. Ji-Yu said indifferently, "This is the Tianyi Palace." He didn't pay much attention to Ji-Yu. He just picked up the precious weapon in his hand and charged in the direction of Ji-Yu. Ji-Yu stepped on the ground and quickly shot backward. The other party kept chopping in the direction of Ji-Yu with his axe. The Qian energy from the axes fell heavily on the ground. Holes appeared one after another on the ground. Ji-Yu suddenly jumped up and landed on the other party's giant axe. She raised her head and looked at the other party. There was a trace of vigilance in his eyes. The other party suddenly charged in the direction of Ji-Yu. He didn't summon the Kuin Peng giant sword. Instead, he stepped on the ground lightly and quickly retreated. The burly man didn't seem to give up. He didn't believe that he couldn't catch Ji-Yu in front of him. His palm landed on Ji-Yu's body, but Ji-Yu's figure disappeared in the blink of an eye. He landed on the ground with a light tap. He quickly turned around and kept leaping lightly. He stepped on the wall beside him. After 2 steps, he suddenly turned around. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of the other party. A ball of chi appeared in his hands. Chi technique, fiery thunder fist. Ji-Yu roared angrily and suddenly punched out. A loud boom was heard. He hammered heavily on the wall, and a huge rumbling sound came from the wall. At this moment, the surrounding walls slowly collapsed. They fixed their eyes on Ji-Yu. At this moment, the remaining 2 people also came forward at the same time. The remaining Qi practitioners fixed their eyes on Ji-Yu. They drew out their precious weapons at the same time and aimed their swords at Ji-Yu's neck. Ji-Yu's protective aura suddenly covered her whole body and blocked that fatal blow. The long swords of the 2 holy sons stopped in front of Ji-Yu's neck. The huge amount of water vapor actually froze in an instant. The 2 long swords suddenly froze. They turned into pieces and fell to the ground. Seeing this, Ji-Yu looked at them. At this moment, they turned around and fixed their eyes on Ji-Yu. In an instant, they disappeared from where they were. They picked up their precious weapons and instantly appeared in front of Ji-Yu. Ji-Yu channeled the chi in her body and infused it into the precious weapons. A heavy sword was chopped down. There was no need to shout, and the blazing city seal was directly released. Blazing flames spread in all directions, closing in on the 3 holy sons. Suddenly, a strong wind blew. A person appeared in front of Ji-Yu and the others. He picked up the precious weapon in his hand and stabbed it into the ground. The blazing fire that had been ignited by the raging fire seal was completely dispersed. Interesting. May I know your name? That person held the sword with one hand and opened his eyes. He looked in Jiyu's direction and said, Chunlong. Chunlong? Hearing this name, the senior disciples who were watching from the side all sucked in a breath of cold air and exclaimed at the same time, Chunlong? Isn't this the sword young master of the 4 major regions? That's right. It said that his precious weapon is a long sword. He can stab 80 times in a flash. He's really powerful. He said coldly, The Saintess of the Cyan Phoenix is not someone you can humiliate. Watch my sword. After saying this, he disappeared on the spot like a green bird. A moment later, he appeared behind Jiyu. He held the long sword in his hand and thrust it at Jiyu's back. His vigor force instantly shrouded Jiyu's back, despite the protection of the vigor force. Jiyu also felt the cold aura piercing directly into her heart. He looked at the other party and said indifferently, You're quite strong. After saying this, they instantly jumped down and charged in Jiyu's direction. Jiyu picked up the sword in her hand and directly waved it. After Jiyu blocked 2 strikes, he suddenly turned around. At this moment, the Kuan Peng giant sword chopped down heavily. With a loud bang, cracks appeared on the stone slabs downstairs, and they fell heavily to the ground. They jumped up in an instant and set their eyes on Lichia. The sword young master was naturally much stronger than the others in terms of using the sword. When Jiyu saw this, a trace of a smile suddenly appeared on the corners of his mouth. At this moment, the treasure in his hand also turned into a long sword. He stabbed the sword forward. When they collided with each other, they instantly fell backwards and slid on the ground. They looked at Jiyu. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Jiyu forced the 3 saints to retreat and directly rushed in the direction of the sword young master. He jumped up and rotated his body, instantly erupting the power of 2 lightning bolts. Although the sword young master was fast, he did not have time to stab in Jiyu's direction. He abruptly turned around and stabbed the ground with his sword. After seeing this, the treasure in Jiyu's hand emitted a dazzling light at this moment. They instantly flew forward and laughed loudly. The sword young master only felt incomparably refreshed today. He threw the treasures towards the sky. In an instant, 2 treasures appeared in the sky. Then, he waved his hand towards the people below. The treasures fell down like meteors. Boom, boom, boom. 3 loud sounds suddenly sounded, and they each took a step back. After looking at each other, Jiyu said indifferently, Good skill. With this fight, the 2 of them had almost used up all the Xian energy in their bodies. The sword young master pulled back the treasure in his hand and walked in front of Jiyu. He said indifferently, You and I have used up all our strength. The 3 of them still wanted to attack, but Li Sijiao suddenly said, Do you really think that I don't exist? This incomparably dignified sentence reverberated forward. If not for the powerful Xian energy in Jiyu's hand, she would have been killed by the other party. After saying this, Jiyu said indifferently, Come. The 3 young masters suddenly stopped talking and walked out from behind. Jiyu said indifferently, What do you plan to do? Qing Wan snorted coldly and did not say anything. He just turned his head and waved his hand heavily. In an instant, the 2 of them gradually approached. They flew forward in an instant and slashed in Jiyu's direction with their swords. Qing Wan took a few steps back, and the heavy sword hit the ground at this moment. After a loud bang, they were sent flying in all directions. After a simple exchange, Qing Wan discovered that Li Sijiao's strength had improved. You become stronger. After saying this, Jiyu sneered. At this moment, the master of the law enforcement hall also walked out. How dare you? This is outside the door. How can you be allowed to mess around here? At this moment, the remaining saints also returned. The saintess, who had extremely delicate eyebrows, also had a smile on her face. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.